Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing tonight? Welcome to our second edition of Comics on the Rocks. I've got a couple of guests that will be joining us tonight. One will be Rita Beth, who was with us last week. And then while we were on the show last week, there was a gentleman that we have known since the early 80s, mid 80s, I guess, or maybe the 90s, who knows. But anyway, he owned a store up in the Northeast, Northeast, when we had our stores down here. So we thought we would bring him on to talk about Mouse and Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. So let's welcome them all aboard. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
In that case, I'm great. Two great people, one good.
Well, just so our viewers know, you can put write comments into us. We'll see them. We'll try to answer them. I think we're going to talk a little bit about Understanding Comics first, mainly because that was the main. There was a panel in Understanding Comics that got me to read Mouse, because there was a panel in there that was talking about how even simple art styles can tell more interesting and broader stories. So.
Nice.
That's one of my favorite bits, and it's early in the book.
Yeah.
In Understanding Comics, one of my favorite bits where he breaks down how the simpler the image, the deeper the meaning. Like if you use too much of your brain on how complicated the image is, it's harder to process the meaning. So
yes.
the simplification of like a human face from a photograph or a photo-like drawing to a more simple drawing all the way down to a smiley face. It doesn't get any more simple than a smiley face, but you absolutely understand what it means with a tiny glance. And that's a point that I think is really important to what makes comics work.
Yes. Because it's more universal. Basically,
throughout the book, he shows different panel styles. Some wrap around, some go a bunch across, kind of like you were talking about last week, Ron, with the Magic Order. And you know, you position on the page, the artist and writer do what they want their reader to see, almost like a magician pointing to something. It may not seem important now, but when you get there, there's a big payoff.
Yep. So this is
that's the page I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yep. And how much can be conveyed with so few lines, and yet how deep the meaning can be. And he says a funny thing. The style within show a good picture of his character of himself. The style that he uses throughout the book, where he pictures himself as the narrator, is rather simplistic. For those who know him, it's like you can go, "Oh, hey, that's Scott," but
yeah, exactly.
It's a relatively simple drawing. And he makes a funny joke at one point about how, if you could tell what kind of fabric the coat was made out of, and you could see all the facial hair and this and that, would you have paid as much attention to me? If I looked more like this more complicated drawing, would you have been able to pay as much attention to me for so long?
And Steve, I think your daughter's watching.
Oh, yeah.
My daughter watching.
Yeah.
I don't see her yet, but hi, daughter.
Hi, daughter.
This is let me see if I can pull it down a little bit.
Yes.
The camera is trying to put the green screen on the image, so it's kind of hard.
It is.
this is it says, as I write this in 1992, American audiences are just beginning to realize that a simple style doesn't necessitate a simple story. And he's using Mouse as the example there.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember this page. Let's see. It starts with a pullback where there are more words.
Yes.
Him on the world looking very small. He's talking, and then suddenly there are worlds around him. And how do we talk about this? In the bottom four panels, there are different ways, different views. And the last panel, he raises a glass.
Yep.
Great debate. And to me, that was the page that really pushed me over the edge into the book. Because who doesn't like a great debate? Friends.
absolutely.
Yeah, the book starts out trying to do a definition of what comics is. So he comes up with the definition of plural and form used with the singular verb, juxtaposed pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence intended to convey information and or to produce an aesthetic response in the viewer. That's a bunch of academia there.
It is.
But then he goes on, it's more easily described as sequential art. Because if it's just one panel telling a story, it's not really comics at that point. It's a cartoon, one panel. But to have sequential art, which shows movement, a lapse of time, etc., is when you get into the form of comics.
It's as Jim Hanley, our big buddy, used to say and used to position his store. My store, he would say, in a big booming voice that belied his big booming body. He would say, our store is where art meets literature.
Yes.
And this is what comics are.
Absolutely.
And that's always stuck with me, as well as Eisner's term, sequential art.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of pages in here where he does a story. He does one of them with no words. The same story with all words, and then the same story combining the words and the story, and then doing it in different ways, because there's different ways that words can work with the story. The words can be additive to the story, which means that they add to what the picture is showing you, or the words can be descriptive, which is they are just describing what you're looking at. They could be parallel, which means that the words have absolutely nothing to do with what you're seeing. They're just another story that it's telling at the same time as the pictures. And so those are the three basic ways that words and pictures work together. And he did the same story using the different techniques.
I'm going to, I don't know how well people are going to see it, but it's really
That's his pipe. Yes.
the masterpiece in the book. Well, one of the many masterpieces.
Awesome.
Famous painting. This is a pipe. And Scott goes on to talk about it.
I love
a painting of a magistrate called the Treasury of Images. The inscription is in French, translated means this is not a pipe. And indeed, this is not a pipe. This is a painting of a pipe.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Well, actually, that's wrong. This is not a painting of a pipe. This is not a. This is a drawing of a painting of a pipe.
Right.
N'est-ce pas? Nope. Wrong again. It's a printed copy of a drawing of the painting of the pipe.
Right.
10 copies, actually. 6 if you fold the pages back. Do you hear what I'm saying? If you do, have your ears checked because no one said a word.
And yet, those are all of the things that we fill in when we see the art on the page telling us a story. We fill in the voices, and going back to what we started with, the simplicity of the art sometimes gives you the universality to be able to be part of the story. It draws you into the story that way.
Absolutely. So with that recognition, a toast to all our colleagues out there, all our friends out there, and particularly Scott McCloud.
Yes.
I was just noticing that it's a good thing you two gentlemen have children because they're all with us right now.
Oh, really?
Well,
thanks for not allowing me to be the only lady tonight.
We have 10 people watching. One of them is my daughter, and one of them is Steve's daughter.
We've got 2 girls on.
Oh, you've got both of your daughters on. Yeah, okay. I just noticed that. Yeah.
Hi, Jeannie. Hi, Joe.
And I'm going to take this opportunity, if you don't mind, to say that one of the many wonderful kids that call me mom, the one who has probably been with me the longest, she and I met in the process of her mom leaving this plane of existence. And she's called me mom pretty much ever since. She just had her second baby boy today.
Awesome.
Actually, yesterday. So I am a pseudo grandmother.
There's nothing pseudo about you, Marita Beth.
Well, I can't claim her by blood, but I love her as though I did. So that's good. So anyway, yay.
Family is who we choose. And I choose many people to be my family, even some who are going to vote in the election in an unhelpful way. But I won't go there.
No, let's have fun, shall we?
Okay, I am going to try to bring a piece of art on here. So let's see if I can do this.
So you said you have 10 people watching right now. I don't know how you see that. That must be something only you see.
Yeah, that's something the moderator can see.
The fella from last week who was so interested in this book, is he with us?
James, are you with us tonight? I can't see who's watching. I just see a total number.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So we need people to say hi, to write hi.
Yeah. If you're watching, please, just even if it's just one time, just comment to let us know you're here.
I see 3 people said hi.
Yeah.
Okay, I was on the private chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't see how I respond. Can you only respond?
No, down at the very bottom, you should say, hey, James. James is here.
Good. I'm glad because
down at the very bottom, you should have a thing saying post comment.
Okay.
Underneath the chat.
What happens if
I don't think we do, babe.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't have it that way either. Okay. So how cool.
That's very nice, Rob.
Okay, does that show up?
It's tiny.
It does.
Shows up, yep.
Okay, but not big enough, really.
Well,
it's good.
It might be big enough for people who are on their phone and can pinch and make it bigger, or big enough, like if this screen is their whole. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, you can read it. You can read it.
Okay. Well, this is one of the panels that I took, or one of the pages that I took to describe the space of time.
Yeah.
Where the top one, it's the same amount of time between all 3 of these, but it's different ways of showing the lapsed time. The top one has the 3 panels in the middle, which are the same picture.
Yep.
To get from point A to point B. In the second row, he puts the gutters much wider in between the two, which also creates the pause.
Slows down your eye.
Yep. And then the bottom row, he just elongates that panel to make it, you know, and those are just three of the different techniques. There's more, but three of the different techniques. And the fun part is so many artists, especially the ones in the 60s, did all of this stuff instinctually.
Yep.
You know, there was no thought put into why they were doing it. It just, they knew that that's what worked for them.
Well, you had the Kirby, who did the big dynamic drawings, but was really cool with facials and movement and acrobatics. You had Ditko, who did that 9-panel grid a whole lot, and who did similar to what Scott was doing, where it's panel after panel after panel of just about the same thing.
Right. And
then wham. Or the famous panel from Spider-Man 33, where he's under this big aperture that's crashed down on him. And you see pages of him talking about how he can't do it. And this is all Ditko.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get the last panel of it, and all of a sudden it's boom, and nothing but movement upwards as he gets both his emotion, his intellect, and his love all powering out at the same time. Cool stuff. And you're right, a lot of this is instinctual, but as these guys who had been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years at that point, right? Kirby was doing it for 30 years, Ditko probably at least 20.
Yep.
They began to know what affected themselves as well as the reader.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys did it for themselves. If I like it, that's where it is.
So I think,
go ahead.
Hold on just a second. I think I've got.
Well, then while you're looking, I'm going to say that one of the things about understanding comics that I think is really crucial to remember is while we wanted, for example, your friend James, who's with us tonight, we wanted him to know this book because he's an artist and is into the creation end of it. And that's very helpful for those folks. But it's also super helpful for those of us that just read and just wanted to understand better how to read and how to get the most out of a book. And this book really helps. You know, like I was thinking while I reread it this time, I'm like, I should give this to my mother. I think she would enjoy it and understand a little bit better why comics were such a part of my life for so long.
Yeah.
Because it really helps you see it as something other than just, the funny book on the magazine.
It's educational. I think it's affirming and validating for those of us who had been reading for decades and who had often been told, no, that goes in the garbage. Do the real. And now suddenly all media is comics. And we're trying to tell people to read the good stuff also.
Yeah, because good and bad is also subjective. That I always try to tell people read what you like. So, let's see if I can do this again.
He's so good at this, isn't he, Marita Beth?
I'm getting there.
I apologize to the fella who points out, of course, you can't pinch and make things bigger. You have to move your fingers the opposite of pinching. But maybe that's not working either, and I'm sorry. Hopefully, you can see this one's a little bit bigger. The words are bigger. Hopefully, you can see this one better.
Yeah. So this is the one where we were talking about what Steve was talking about earlier with the panels. We normally know reading from left to right. And then if you're going from two panels to one panel, you're going down. and then from the one panel you go back to the left, and then you start going to the right. But where you get confused here is, on that second panel on the third row, on the do you go down now, or do you go across, or
Right.
and that's where the artist has to start using their art to tell you which panel to go to next.
Yep.
So
look at which direction is the action flowing.
yeah, and or just shapes. So like in the second panel on the third row, if you had Spawn's cape with the point going to the bottom left, that would make your eye follow down to that bottom panel, which is what you would read next.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the second panel was the Thing hitting Dr. Doom, and Dr. Doom was flying from left to right, you would automatically go to the long, thin panel next. So it just depends on how they do the art to tell you which one to go to next.
And of course, the point that Scott McCloud is making with that page is that layout isn't really very good.
No.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we hope we don't encounter that too often.
Or it's okay to encounter it as long as the artist helps you out to show you where you're going.
On the other hand, you have a panel like this, or a page like this that Scott puts in.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it's perfect.
Yeah.
You know exactly what to do, and if you don't, it doesn't matter. Go
Right.
in a circle. You'll get to the right place.
Right.
Yeah.
Read a word balloon. Watch me sit lounging casually and then come down to educate you some more. Okay, when I'm done, I'll just pull back a little.
Yeah.
Life's good. Oh, and I've got Kirby fingers. Anyway.
Kirby fingers. Great.
Who knew?
So at this point, let's just go ahead and Marita Beth and I both went ahead and put what we were drinking next to our name. And we forgot to tell Steve to do it.
We didn't. Sorry, Steve.
Sorry, Steve, but I chose a Jefferson Reserve because it's a good American straight bourbon, and we're talking about a pure American art form.
I'm not sure that statement isn't arguable, but
original American art form. Comic books are an original, not comics as a medium.
There you go.
Books are original American art form.
I'll give you that one. So I chose because I will confess that I have read Understanding Comics more often than I've read Mouth. So I needed to go back and reread all of Mouse before tonight, whereas Understanding Comics, I kind of could pick and choose what I was rereading because I know it fairly well. So Rain was more in tune with the Mouse story than it was with the Understanding Comics. And so I put a Riesling. In fact, I should actually give my husband credit. He is my favorite bartender, and he picked for me a delightful Riesling because he actually loves me. And if he went to the liquor store for today, he realized he didn't have a German wine in the house. So I'm drinking Riesling. I'm drinking once again out of a beautiful handmade piece of glass art by my friend Shannon Morgan, I talked about last week. And I'm very much enjoying it. The second bottle of wine, should I get that far, is a different Riesling, so that will be fun.
Nice. We're looking forward to hearing you as you drink that one.
I'll bet you.
And I'm drinking a Thomas McKenna 10-year, and it's one that somebody had recommended, and then I started to look it up. It was hard to find at first. Now I have a couple bottles of it, and it's my go-to. I'm experimenting with a lot of others. I have it in a fine little recently bought smudgy glass. I need to wake up a little in honor of our mutual friend Rory Root. I have my hot Joe with me as well.
Yes.
And I can grab a little bit of coffee, think of Rory, and words will come spouting out of my mouth for hours. Because that was our friend Rory.
If you can channel Rory's spirit, that will absolutely happen.
Jane, Joe, write something. Why?
So
if any of our guests have questions, they should those into their little tippy tip, type those in, and and we can.
When Morgan wrote Or Bone, was that a desire to talk about Jeff Smith?
I think if I remember correctly, when that showed up, it was in direct contrast to the simplicity of the lines and the depth of the story.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Morgan was at just the right age when Bone came out. And of course, or I guess she got it later on when it wasn't when Bone came out, but I introduced it to her as she got to the right age. And she fell in love with that story.
As did my kids, and my grandkids are sleeping now. I see that Brent Irwin says hi. Great to see you too, Brent. And Joe Ellen writes, Understanding Comics was one of her husband's textbooks at Drexel University.
Oh, cool.
Is that cool? Yeah.
There are several lesson plans out there for college professor or for teachers of all, using Understanding Comics in the classroom.
Yeah. I had forgotten. I did a little research on because, as I said, I read the book enough. I didn't feel like I needed to totally read it cover to cover, but I did spend some time with Scott McCloud's website this week, and I had completely forgotten about some of the high visibility projects he's been involved with, teaching, writing, basically comics about how to do computer.
Yeah.
Programs and how to do. I mean, like he's done all.
That's another one of the
comic book things.
Was that Reinventing Comics?
I was just gonna. No, I didn't write it down, so my brain is.
He's got 3 books out right now. One of them is Understanding Comics, Reinventing Comics, and Making Comics is the other one.
Yes, and there's also been projects he's worked on, like
right.
more projects, and one of the really high visibility ones was either Google or Microsoft or somebody big like that. Forgive me for not knowing exactly when I. Yeah, that was well enough to look that up while I'm on. I can't. So.
One of the points he made early on when he was trying to describe what comics is that people refer to them as diagrams, but they're not really diagrams, they're comics. But diagrams sound so much better, but that's why they're used
how to put together your IKEA or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why they're used to teach, is because they're so universally understood without having to learn a language. We instinctively know the language already.
Comics are so diverse. And so Jeff Smith's work is done in a simplistic style that reveals high drama and humor as it goes through. In remembering that the main character's name is Thorn, the female, and my daughter Joe put up, we've been reading Bone slowly at bedtimes. What she didn't put up was To Rose. So that's kind of cool.
Right?
Yeah. I'm reading about Thorn to Rose.
Yeah. Well, Rose was the grandma, wasn't she?
Yes.
So
That's beautiful.
yeah. I've got another page I want to try to bring up here. Hold on just a second.
Oh, we're not very interested when we're quiet.
Can y'all see this one?
I'm leaning in.
It's tiny. I can't read it, but I can see it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I need to figure out how to make bigger pictures then.
Yeah.
I guess I could save all of these into a slideshow and then do a full screen PowerPoint instead of it having so much space around it.
That's a great idea and requires a whole lot more time to prep than you're probably giving what to drink.
Anyway, this is basically because I can read the big one. From
what page you on?
From left to right. I think I can. Hold on. Maybe I can't.
What page are you on?
You know, I didn't save page numbers.
I know.
But it's how the panel transitions work. So from left to right, number one is moment to moment. So you have an expression of time in between the panels. In the first one, you see the lady blinking. In the second one, you see Saturn getting closer. And in the third one, you see the spider getting closer. The next one, number two, is an action to action panel sequence where they're using the panels. There's an action that happens in between the panels. So you have the pouring, the baseball coming in and then him hitting the baseball. You have the pouring the martini, drinking the martini and burping. And then the car going and crashing. Then you have subject to subject transitions, which is where you're going from one whole subject or scene to another.
I found the page if you want me to read.
Yeah.
Starting where you just left off or starting at the beginning?
Go ahead and do it from the beginning.
Page number one, the panel number one reads, most panel-to-panel transitions in comics can be placed in one of several distinct categories. The first category, which we'll call moment to moment, requires very little closure. Next, in number two, are those transitions featuring a single subject in a distinct action to action progression. And then number three, where you just were, says the next type takes us from subject to subject while staying within a scene or idea. Note the degree of reader involvement necessary to render these transitions meaningful. And then number four is deductive reasoning is often required in reading comics, such as in these scene to scene transitions, which transport us across significant distances of time and space.
Oh.
Are you there?
We're here.
We're here. Morgan, I'm guessing you're talking about on Ron's screen.
Yes, she would be.
Okay, because I kept going and going and going and said, she's teasing me.
No, he's the only one with control over that, I think.
Yeah, it just doesn't make it that much bigger. I don't think, does it?
So you just did something.
Yeah, it just took away the outer.
Right.
Yeah. It made it a little bit bigger, but not a lot.
Not really.
Joe, is Rose watching?
I don't know that we're that interesting.
You'd be surprised. Apparently, Rose was very excited to find out that the grandma's name was Rose.
Yeah, can you imagine? I along that line.
Hi, Rose.
Oh, I am so sorry. I did not realize I was giving away a plot point. I did not even put 2 and 2 together on that one.
That's okay. I'm going to forget by time I'm done with my drink.
Do you mean we were the reveal? I didn't catch that either. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
Yeah, because I said who the grandmother was. So I am so sorry about that.
Well, I think Joe means that she was excited by the reveal while reading the book.
That's the way I interpret it too. So hey.
Oh, look at that!
You know,
yeah, that worked. That worked.
Scott, writing a new book, enlarging comics.
I love having a tech support daughter that's on the show with me.
That is pretty darned cool. You should be on speed dial.
And Morgan's excited because they made the announcement on her game this week that they announced they went back and completely redid Mafia 1 with today's graphics and all new action and things like that. So that's what she's been working on for the last couple of years.
Wow.
Very, very cool. Yay. You go, girl. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Hi guys, I see you again.
So I'm gonna have to share something because I was flipping through my book just now and had completely forgotten about this. And just now it was all I could do not to squeal so loud your ears would have probably hurt. So Steve's already showed off the fact that he owns an original page spread from this book that's an amazing thing to own. So I'm just going to share my little bit of joy right now is that reading a copy or I own a copy of this that Scott signed to us years ago. I'm describing the inside pile and read about this or something like that. But I just was flipping pages and found this. I don't know if you can see this or not. Well, does this go into focus where you can hang on, let me find it. Can you see that right there?
Did he draw an extra couple panels just for you?
He didn't draw it, but he wrote at the bottom of the page with the dancer.
Yeah.
Page belongs to Marita Beth.
That is so great.
And it made me so insanely happy to see that again. I had forgotten.
And that is because Marita Beth has a wonderful sketchbook.
And I am.
That has all dancers in it.
Ah.
When I was and still when I take it to a convention, still I do this.
Yes.
When if you have a sketchbook where you enjoy collecting original art from artists, it's fun for them. If you don't ask them to draw the same that they always draw, they like a challenge. Mm-hmm. And so I decided, however many 30 years ago, I decided to pick a theme for my sketchbook that resonated with me and my soul and my history. And I grew up as a dancer, and I love music and musical theater and all that. So I asked every artist who draws in my sketchbook to please play with the theme, which is music and dance. And so I've got some amazing pictures of like superheroes tap dancing and stuff like that. That's just adorable and charming beyond belief.
Yep.
So,
do you by any chance have one from Colleen Duran?
I do have a Colleen Duran.
Yeah, I can just see with her the light touch that she uses.
Oh,
beautiful that
must be. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
James O'Barr did a James O'Barr did a great one for you. James O'Barr?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, he did.
Did he crow about it?
I see what you did there.
If we ever do one of his books, I've got a really fun story to tell you about him later. Though that wouldn't be a perfect tonight. So anyway, sadly, I don't have an original Scott McCloud drawing in my book. I don't know how that happened, but I don't. But I have that page inscribed to me in my pocket, so that makes me happy. So. Where are we going next, Ron?
I'm trying to find one more page here that I was looking for.
I'm amused by Morgan, who says basically she's multitasking. She's watching us on one screen and debugging your problems while she's debugging her other problems.
The game on the other screen, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. Pretty cute.
Every little bit, I have to, acknowledge again. Hi, Jeannie. We talked about Rose. We haven't talked about you lately. I know that you loved meeting Wendy and Richard Pini, and that you love their stuff even still.
Is that's her big connection? Her hook in to the comics was ElfQuest?
Well, one of them.
Nice, very nice.
Friends and Breeding are a big hook for them.
Say it again.
Ron Friends and Brett Breeding are big hooks.
Nice.
So,
all right, this one.
Okay, this one is setting a scene, basically.
Okay.
So in chapter 1, we talked about one such opportunity for giving readers a sense of place is the establishing shot.
Yeah.
Like the big widescreen shot, just like you would see in a movie to establish a scene.
Yeah.
And then those big long shot panels that tell you where you are, usually right before zooming in to the protagonist. So that's what he's showing in the second row is, zooming in, and then how you can go closer and closer and closer for the tight shots and the close-ups. And it's better for the artist because they don't have to draw all those leaves anymore.
So true. That's great.
Just what were there? 8 panels in that page? 9?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7.
Yep. Which is
1, then 2, then 3.
No, 1, 3, and 3.
3 and 3.
But it was
1, 3, and 3. 1, 3, and 4.
1, 3, and 4. Okay.
Yeah.
That would be 8.
It's like a Marx Brothers routine. I don't know.
Oh no, it's 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Because there are 2 right on top of one another.
Yeah. Because we talked about 9-page scenes that Ditko does, and this is a different way to do a 9-page scene. Ditko just moves you across the page and back down. This, as you said, Ron, establishes the shot.
Yeah.
This puts you in place, and now it plays with your eyes and your thoughts.
So we're about halfway through. If there's any questions about understanding comics, and I'm sorry I didn't have more of the pages up that we could look at closer. I'm continuing to learn how to use this program, and it has a lot of cool stuff, but I think I need to do it more with more prep time. I thought I could put the pictures up there and they would automatically be what I wanted them to be.
And I mentioned last week that I have the page, although I can't find it right now. Last page of Understanding Comics, where Ivy walks in with Sky. And this is Sky's first appearance in the world, even though she was still in Ivy's belly.
right there.
And that's so unusual in Judaism to do that kind of a reveal.
Yeah.
There too.
Yep.
And so then a few months later, the book was published and Ivy was born.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
When I put this up earlier today that we were doing this show, a friend of mine works for Heritage Auction Gallery, and she texted me and she said that they just got several pages from Understanding Comics in that are about to go up for auction.
Wow.
And I thought that was pretty fun that it was happening at the same time, Although why somebody would get rid of Scott McCloud pages, I don't understand. I guess,
Must have died.
And mine are all signed for Steve.
Yeah, either that or
sell it.
People are running into rough times right now, so I can understand it. I wish that they would go for a cheap enough price I could get them. But I don't think they will go for that low.
Yeah.
So shall we move over to Mouse now?
Sure. I could only find my copy of 2.
Okay. But we know what happens in 1. So for those that don't know, Mouse is a wonderful book that tells the beginning of World War II in Europe, and it tells it from the perspective of, well, it's an autobiography basically. Art is going to his father and having his father tell him stories of when his father was in Europe. And Art's father was a pretty well-off Jewish businessman in Poland when Germany decided to invade Poland. And so the story flips back and forth in between Art talking to his father in America, because they've all wound up in America now, and having his father tell him the story. So it shows you the relationship between Art and his father, which is a different, it's a strained relationship at times. They Art did not turn out the way that his father wanted him to turn out, but Art really wants to get.
Of us do.
Morgan turned out just like I wanted her to turn out.
You mean that's a thing? Not turning out the way I want to turn out?
I guess it's just me.
So basically, that sets up the story, and so it flips back and forth in between where Art's father is telling what happened in Poland and in Germany during that time. And then it goes back to the relationship, and the relationship that they have changes as the story goes along, because I think that they have a better understanding of what is going on. There's a scene in there where Art decided to be an artist because his dad really didn't have any value put on art. So there's a scene where when Art was younger, he had drawn a story about his mother. His mother had committed suicide. And so that messed up Art, and so he drew a story about how that affected him, but he had never shown it to his dad. Somebody that was a friend of his stepmother's saw it, shared it with the stepmother. The stepmother never showed it to his dad, but left it where his dad found it. And so the little interchange where they talked about that without really talking about it, but it was kind of like, the stepmother immediately saw that there was emotion, power, and everything else in the way that he drew that story. And then the father just acknowledged the story without acknowledging the process behind it. But after that point, that the relationship did seem to start changing.
Communication is a powerful tool, no matter how it's used. Yeah, it's interesting. You're talking about Spiegelman's mother being a suicide. That must have been something I blocked out when I read it. It's a very personal thing for me also. And that realization and how to understand a parent's death in that context is really one of the turning points, I think, in a person's life.
Yeah.
And Spiegelman being able to put it out there had to have been powerful for both him and his father, who most likely had never talked about it.
Right.
The thing I find interesting about Spiegelman's work, especially coming right after understanding comics, is looking at the page layouts, looking at how they go, and yet how crude the artwork is. It's not at all refined. And how could it be when you're talking about a subject like this?
Right.
Which makes it, I think, even more powerful.
And I thought it was interesting the animals that he chose to be each nationality.
I was figuring we would talk about that, and I'm looking forward to your insights.
Well, it's like the Poles were pigs.
Uh-huh.
The Jews were mice. The Germans were dogs and cats. So it was kind of like a hierarchy of predator prey.
And sometimes it's really evident that they're not what they appear to be. They're wearing a mask. Did you notice that?
Yes.
A lot of the pig masks are not. I mean, it's really like, who knows what's under there, but they're wearing a pig mask.
Well, and that was because the Poles were, some of them were working with the Germans, some of them were not working, so it was one of those that they were unsure. It's like the one that came and turned them in when they were living in the upstairs, and the whole family was there, right. And they were hidden, but well, that was the mouse. That was another Jew that came in and then turned them in. And it was just part of what went on during the war. Survival makes you do many different things.
One of the things that I was reading tonight, and what?
You just cut out.
Not working?
It is now.
All right. Well, you guys did that for me, so I think it's just whatever. But can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was telling Kyle, because I was reading this late after he'd gone to bed and was putting up with me being still with the reading light. And the next day I was telling him I just couldn't put it down. You just really can't. But I was very entranced by the number of times, actually, when somebody who he thought, or some character main character thought was going to be on their side, ended up not acting that way at all. And it was a real sign of the times that he even mentioned at one point that Jews were turning each other in because, well, if I give you him, maybe you'll leave me alone.
Right.
There's a whole mentality of they need so many people today, and as long as that people isn't me, I'm good. Like, I can't even imagine feeling so desperate that I would have to turn on people like that. But those are the times.
Over time, there are mice who are rats.
Yeah.
And one of the things, whether it be the book Night, Schindler's List,
right.
Guy and Frank, Mouse, that you see over and over again, is that your friends aren't your friends, and yet those you thought your enemies aren't necessarily your enemies. It's an incredible thing where you have to, I mean, we all wear masks and roles, but it's amazing when it goes this close to life and death. That if I let down my mask for a moment at the wrong time, somebody else may take down their mask, and now it's over for me.
Right.
And this is what Spiegleman, growing up in America, had a hard time seeing, I think, until his father did what we've done for millennium. We tell our story to the next generation, so that they may better understand us.
Yep. I'm going to interject something, as we do frequently with media overlapping each other, something that crossed my mind also on this subject. Are you guys aware of the musical called Come From Away?
Rewind you
Can you hear me?
right where you said, "Are you aware?" and then it all cut out. So start from where you said, "Are you aware?"
Are you aware of a newish musical called Come From Away?
No.
About 3 years ago. The musical Come From Away, this is a brief aside, has really very little to do with what we're talking about, but it does relate, so bear with me. The musical Come From Away is the story of a small town in Canada that was the emergency landing spot for 38 airplanes on September 11th, 2001.
Oh, wow.
And their town swelled tenfold, and they turned high school, school gymnasiums and into giant hotel rooms, and they accommodated 7,000 people that they, were strangers, right? And so anyway, it is an amazing story. It's beautiful music. It's a beautiful story. It's not overly sad because it's dealing with those people and the life they led for 5 days. We had all these guests. But one of the poignant stories being told, and lots of, you can imagine, lots of little snippets of people's stories. One of the poignant stories being told was of a Jewish gentleman who sought out, I got the feeling he was from the town, but I'm not actually sure if that even matters. But he sought out a rabbi who was grounded in this event to tell his story, because he had been raised, he was shipped off to America to be safe as a child, like so many people did. His parents said, go, we would rather have you live than be with us. And that happened thousands of times. So he was raised in America by people who weren't his parents, but his parents left him with the parting message: never tell people you're Jewish. Don't even tell the woman you marry someday. Don't tell people you're Jewish. It's not safe. And when 9/11 happened, and he realized all the lives that were snuffed out with no warning, he had to tell somebody his story so that it would be shared and would be told. And it's such a poignant moment that he seeks out a rabbi and talks about being raised in Poland and being sent to America and all this. And it's just so interesting. But he says, I had to tell someone, because all those stories out there today suddenly can't be told. I need to tell mine. Well, and so this telling of the Spiegleman family story is so rich, and it's so special that reading it is it feels like a privilege, to read about it.
Whether it's this play, Fiddler on the Roof,
sure,
Fantastics, Mouse, Understanding Comics, A Contract with God, Bernie Kriegstein's Master Race, an 8-page gem of a story about a Holocaust survivor from EC Comics. Wow. They all share the commonality of humanity being humane, and how to learn from our past in a way that we help our present and our children to be better for it. And, to me, my comic love, although not my business acumen, has always been the legacy for my kids and my grandkids in many ways in terms of the way I think about the world. Uh, if you truly love comics, I find it hard to believe that you can be bigoted, prejudiced, or in any way hostile towards other human beings. To me, it precludes.
If only.
And so this is part of the legacy. And it's also the legacy of Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn,
Yes.
Shakespeare. We learn our lessons from art and literature that are steeped in the present and yet ring true in the future. Anyway, my kids know I like soapboxes. Hey, Joelle, I noticed that at 8:47 you said, "Oh, wow." Do you remember what you said, "Oh, wow" about?
What are we talking about?
I think that's when we first started talking about Mouse. And
No, it was before that.
Okay.
Well, if she's still here, she'll let us know. And if not, oh, wow, you're gone before telling us?
Morgan knows about Come From Away. That's yay.
Yep.
Yay.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
To Scott McCloud's art being on auction.
Oh, yeah.
As my daughter Jean says to me all the time, "Dad, context. I don't know what 'oh, wow' means 15 minutes after I stop talking."
I'm glad she remembered. Thank you. Morgan reminds us that they're on a delay too. So
yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, Morgan's on the West Coast, so she's always on a delay.
That's all
So we're on the East Coast. Does that mean I'm pre-laid?
Yeah.
You're pre-laid, yeah. We won't even go into what that means.
I work with a nonprofit organization, and we have volunteers all over the country, and we have to have meetings, and we're forever like texting each other. Is this meeting at 7 Central Time or 7 Eastern Time?
I came on an hour early, which is unlike me because I'm functioning on my time.
I didn't even think to talk about, different times.
Well, better early. Better during and not okay.
If anybody wants to understand what comic book retailer conferences were like in the mid 80s to close to 2000, this is it. Late at night, drinking, chatting, running through incredible amounts of themes, and just getting to know and love each other.
Yeah.
Having just come back from Oregon, and I guess in February I was in Oregon at the Comics Pro meeting.
Yeah.
And it was, you'd get to bed at about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And the first meeting was at 7 o'clock the next morning. Yeah. And for 4 days, that's what you did.
Yeah.
Sounds like any convention, really.
Yeah.
The best of times is always after hours at the cocktail parties.
Yep.
And frequently in those days, depending upon where it was, a Frank Miller might walk into the conversation, or a Neil Gaiman, or a Charlie Vess may be around.
We were in Portland, so we had Greg Rucka.
Okay, yeah. And he's no longer a new Turk, is he? You feel like he's been around for 20 years or more.
Yeah. Yeah, he actually has a show on ABC now, so he's big deal.
Oh, is that Stumptown?
Stumptown, yep.
Hope it continues. I'm enjoying that a lot.
I have to. I haven't watched the show, but I love the graphic novels. So yeah.
Okay.
You guys, I'm going to step away for a second.
Okay.
Bring
But
me
yeah,
up.
I've read the graphic novels, really enjoyed them, but I haven't watched the show. I am so late on watching shows. Although I did watch Stargirl this week. I don't know if you saw that from Jeff Johns.
No.
It's because I'm a huge Justice Society fan.
Okay.
and,
Yes.
and so it was just so cool seeing Our Man in costume and Dr. Midnight in costume and the Golden Age Sandman. It's just, and Luke Wilson as Stripesy is the best casting I have ever.
Well, why is it that DC can do it right on television and doesn't have a friggin' clue except for occasionally Batman in the theaters?
Because Warner Brothers, before AT&T took over, was always in silos. And TV at that time was run by Bruce Timm, and he knew who all the good writers and creators were.
Yeah.
And he kept them all to himself. That's basically what it was they were in silos and in competition with one another in the company. And so it was one of those that all of the good people were working with Bruce in either animation or TV. And Jeff Loeb was there too. And then Jeff Loeb went over to Marvel.
Right.
But yeah, they just kept all of the people that really knew and loved comics with them.
And so that stayed with the cartoons.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, now that AT&T owns them, nobody's there. So I don't know what's going to happen. Although, Stargirl, they let Jeff Johns do, Shazam was a great movie. And Jeff Johns was the executive producer on that one. And Jeff Johns is the executive producer on Stargirl. Of course, Stargirl is a very personal story for him because Courtney is based off of his little sister who died in a plane crash. So he created that character as kind of a remembrance of her.
Nice.
So
in today's world, I don't read much except for articles on therapy, books on trauma, and helping to connect myself with that world. But comics has always, and books, science fiction, Heinlein, Max Collins, and mystery, have been the underpinnings of my understandings of humanity and socialization and the systems in the world. So it's been interesting to get back into looking at comics, reading the first 5-6 pages of the Magic Order, and being really impressed with the style of storytelling. But where I'm catching up right now, and I suggest that people younger than me do it, look at those old 1950s black and white westerns and detective shows.
Oh yeah.
If you want to see things that present humanity in that time, detectives were flawed, honorable, and smoked a carton or two of cigarettes in each episode. But morals were on straight. And the way these things, episodic, 34 to 39 episodes in a season, told the story, whether it's Mr. Lucky and Ross Andrews, a much better actor than John Vivian, but that's aside for anybody old enough to know that. But whether it's the Warner Brothers, which were all linked in some ways, or Tales, the life and legend of Wyatt Earp, there's a beginning and a middle and an end to every episode, which sometimes goes on thematically for a bunch of episodes. And this is the comics I grew up on. It started with 3 7 to 10 page stories in a comic, and it grew to 2. And then Stan and Jack and Steve came along, and a full book gave you wow, but there were loose ends for future books.
Yep.
And it was very much the same style of storytelling, which we got into. I'd love to see it go back to that a little, which the Magic Order seems to be doing, in which they give you something to sink your teeth in the book, instead of essentially 18 pinup pages, extra panel or 2 in a page, and then you're done with the book in 13 seconds going, huh, that was
that will, that goes back to the 90s, when all of a sudden it was the artists that were the driver of the stories rather than the writers. And it has flip-flopped a couple of times since the 90s. Before the 90s, the writers drove the story. Then in the 90s, when Liefeld and McFarlane and those guys came around, they were driving the story with the art. And, I am not going to ever say anything bad about Liefeld the person, because he did a lot for the comics industry.
I agree.
He has become somebody that is very disgruntled recently, as he's no longer, he's trying to remain relevant, but he's doing it in the wrong way, unfortunately. Unfortunately, Ryan Reynolds has taken on Deadpool, and Deadpool is no longer Rob Liefeld. It's Ryan Reynolds. So he no longer has that to hang his hat on. He's recently come out in favor of the Comicsgate people, and I just, I don't understand that at all. But in his time, he did as much for comics as Stan did, in the late 60s, early 70s.
Well,
At what point did you ever think that a comic artist would be on TV doing a Levi 501 jeans commercial? That got more people interested in comics than anything else.
Yeah, in a more subtle way, which maybe didn't drive as many units. But from what I can tell, there aren't many units being driven now.
Right.
Jim Valentino, in his time, was had a great sensibility. His Shadowhawk, while derivative, had some storytelling which was ahead of its time, both in theme and I think execution. And his biographical comic, because that's a whole nother genre we could get into at some point, is biographical comics. And his, I think, gave me an appreciation of him that I could never have understood if he was just a writer or an artist who I happened to have met once or twice.
And also going back to
yes,
going back to units not being moved. The funny part to think about is, or not funny, but the interesting thing is, right now the all ages and young reader categories is so huge. So you're looking at I don't know if you've seen any of the ones that DC has done. There's a imprint that they started. They no longer call it. There was Zoom and Ink, and one of them was for young readers. The other one was for mid-grade readers.
Okay.
But they did a Raven story in there that was, and they're getting like Cami Garcia to write these, and top Renee, I can't remember Renee's last name. I can never pronounce it anyway. The one that did Smile and Guts, and But all of those comics, you're talking about a $9.99 graphic novel, basically, that is selling in the 600,000 to 800,000 unit range about Raven.
Selling them.
And you're talking about the very top comic, $4.99 comic, $3.99 comic, coming in at 50,000.
Telgemeier.
I remember having lunch with
Look it up.
Carol Kalish, and it was either Lou Banks or Sven Larson, maybe Jim Hanley, and we were talking about units, and I said something to Carol, and she said, "Yeah, but you know that Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane were selling 600,000 units when they were canceled."
Yeah.
You know, it's such a different world.
It is a very different world. You know, they just, you know, with what's going on in the world right now, Marvel and DC both have just canceled or gone to digital only on several books. The hard part is they're doing it in the middle of a series, which is really frustrating. So it's like you've got 3 issues of a floppy, and then issues 4 and 5 you can only get digitally, you know, if you want to finish the story. And it's because they are finally understanding that they flooded the market with so much product that no single book could ever get above a certain level, because there were still people out there that were trying to keep up. The fear of missing out, FOMO, you had to keep up with the whole line, or else you weren't going to keep your story going.
Right.
And so, you know, they were cannibalizing their own sales. So hopefully this will, you know, one of my hopes is as we come out of this and the publishers are restructuring their printing schedules and their print lines, is that we will have a more condensed schedule and line of books that will all sell better.
For Joe Ellen, who says that her father is talking slurred because of too much bourbon. 600,000, not 6,000.
Yeah. Right now, there are books that are selling 6,000 that aren't being canceled. You know,
Do you
from
remember
Marvel and DC.
when you loaned me a book called The Long Tail, or you recommended a book called
Yes.
The Long Tail? That's what that's about.
Yeah.
Well, and because the comic, a lot of IP rather than as stories, so you can justify losing money on print if you think you're going to sell merchandise or movies down the road, because it's an R&D IP, intellectual property.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand.
So basically, you're using comics as a R&D cost rather than as a income producer.
Yeah.
I would love to go back under that understanding, and I would love to see a revival of Sandman Mystery Theater on television, done in that noir type of setting. Guy Davis was so ahead of his time,
Yes.
and Matt Wagner was able to work with him so seamlessly in that. Oh, I think we're about to see it.
I just found something that I wanted to show off.
Oh,
So I can't even remember when I got this done.
show it again. Show it again.
Let's see.
That is so cool.
That's cool.
It's a Matt Wagner Batman, and it was just stuck. It's a
Very cool.
bag and a board because it was drawn on a backing board, and it was just stuck in between some comics that I had.
Okay. Now I don't mean to one up you here.
Of course.
I just found yesterday. I've been cleaning
One up him.
this crazy room that is our office, my husband and I. I just found in a tube, like in a cardboard tube, a rolled up piece of butcher paper that came from some restaurant, I'm sure in San Diego. And on it is a hand-drawn in crayon Charles Vess.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was like, why do I not have this framed? I'm not sure. It's awesome. It's funny because it's music dance oriented. So it's obviously I'm out at dinner going, I wish I had my sketchbook. And Charles going, well, here, let me just do this.
Charles Vess is one of the most pleasant people you will ever meet.
Absolutely.
He's the epitome of Zen in life.
Yeah.
I felt so honored a few months ago. I don't remember why. We were posting some stuff, and Charles came onto my Facebook page and said he remembered being at one of my stores and how much fun it was, and how cool it was to be in touch with the fans. And the interesting thing about Vess, he's never going to be considered a great comic book artist, even though he is, because his ability to do fantasy is so incredible.
Yeah.
I love his work so much.
Absolutely. Joe's so cool. We collect at the bedtime young kid books.
Yes. Yes, of course they are. Absolutely.
I raise good kids or what?
Yep.
Absolutely. I had no doubt.
It's so important to be able to experience what we experience and be able to pass it on, not just through our words, but through the things we like in life.
Well, through the passion that we have that they pick up.
I agree.
Yeah. It's one of the few downsides to not having made babies is that I don't have that. I don't have that opportunity.
But you've had many dogs in your life, and aren't they your babies?
I have had dogs.
But you have other people's kids.
Pardon?
You do.
Other people's kids.
I do have other people's kids, and I obviously I've had some impact on them.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that
they're they usually need me when they're 18, 20, and 25 to get through, the adult trials. And
if I'm remembering, my kids met you.
At that point.
Yeah, I think my kids first met you pre-10.
True.
I think you stayed over.
for Joe's kids.
I did.
Comic Fest in Philly.
Yep, that's right. That was good times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of Rory, he brought us. I brought us to a restaurant that served. It's no longer there, but served 4 menus: Cantonese, Szechuan, vegetarian, and macrobiotic. And Rory came in like he owned the place. He says, "You want chow fun?" And I say, "What's chow fun?" I get their General Tso chicken, vegetarian. He says, "No, we want chow fun. You got bean and garlic sauce?" And they said, "Sure." And that's what I ate there until the time they closed. A lot of really cool people in our world, guys.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
And Morgan says that you were one of the many aunts who would talk to her like an adult whenever you came over. That you did not.
Yay. Thank you, Morgan. I always believed that it was ridiculous to treat children like less than human, and that's what a lot of people do. And
Yep.
I'm a firm believer in that being an important part of why you're such an amazing young woman.
So we talked a bit about Mao's comics, a bit about understanding comics. We had also talked last week a little bit about a contract with God. This is the first graphic novel
Yes.
done specifically as a graphic novel. My ex-wife and I read it together before we were married. And it's just an impactful book. It's about Jews in, oh, that's so sweet, Morgan. It's about Jews in Bronx, Dropsy Avenue, around the time of coming over from Ellis Island. And they're Orthodox, they're religious, and they have to figure out how to make it in this world. And there's such an ethnicity about this book, and yet an universality. And the power of the panel work, going back to Scott McCloud, if you can see this, it's a 2-page spread. And on those 2 pages, there are only 3. There we go. Three panels. And yet, when you look at the man almost in a Kilroy position over the page, and on the next page, just sitting there with both narration and a single caption. There's a power if you read the full book that is just amazing. And a warning.
We need to have a whole Will Eisner night.
Absolutely. If you have kids, you want to pre-read it to see what you think's appropriate for them, because there are definitely adult themes. But here again, you have 11 panels. No, not even 10 panels over 2 pages. And every panel moves your eye. Every panel has a combination of different facets where the blacks are spotted, where there are no blacks whatsoever. The character running. It's hard for me to express just looking at it how powerful this is. But, this is Tevye on steroids.
Yeah.
Right? Tradition.
Absolutely.
It's on steroids. And this is the power that can be done in no other medium than the one that the 3 of us have adopted. It's amazing.
Will Eisner did the predecessor to Understanding Comics when he wrote Sequential Art.
Yes.
Which was his attempt at doing what Scott McCloud wound up doing in such a more academic, scholarly way.
Right.
Will Eisner did it in the only way that Will Eisner could do it.
In the way that was appropriate for his day and age.
Right.
Right. I didn't remember that Eisner did it before Scott.
Yeah.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because he did Sequential Art, and which was his attempt at training.
Comics and Sequential Art is the name of the book.
Huh?
Comics and Sequential Art.
Comics and Sequential Art. Okay. Yeah. It was the and Scott McCloud actually references it in
fact, for those who might be even a tiny bit hesitant to adopt Scott McCloud as the expert that he is, he says in his acknowledgments of the book we talked about tonight, he says, special thanks also due to the magnificent and magnanimous Will Eisner, who offered many words of encouragement and excellent advice in the project's later stages. Will Eisner's sublime art and stories have been inspiration to me and to thousands of artists for many years. Through personal encounters, he's becoming something of a role model for me as well. Eisner's Comics and Sequential Art was the first book to examine the art form of comics. Here's the second.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it without you, Will. Thanks.
Yeah.
And the generation moving forward that are, the word is exactly right. Magnanimous.
More bourbon.
Magnanimously right.
This
You're
show
right.
is not just a scholarly event. It's
One sip, magnanimous. I can do it. And, Joe Kubert was another one of those guys. He invented the process in comics with Joe Mora. Joe Mora's son-in-law was Mo Howard or his father-in-law. I don't remember which. But Joe was just there. There wasn't a person he wouldn't sit with, draw on a napkin, draw on a piece of paper, and just show them what to do and how to do it and evaluate their art.
Yep.
It's a generation of powerful gentility, I think, while at the same time,
great phrase.
Yeah.
Magnanimous.
So I've had this discussion recently with some younger kids at the store when I'm talking about the history of comics. And it has occurred to me that you had two parallels with Marvel and DC. With Marvel had Joe Buscema, and DC had Joe Kubert. And it's like they were both faithful to each company. That was basically, those were their companies, but they were also the leaders of the art field. You can't get better than Joe Kubert or Joe Buscema as far as Joe Kubert, as far as his Tarzan stuff, his war stuff, everything else. And then John Buscema was the same type, but only with more power with the Avengers and Silver Surfer and things like that. The anatomy was more Greek Roman godlike, but the feelings and everything from the art were the same. Why are you smirking?
I don't mean to smirk. I'm just not sure I would have thrown those two names at this argument. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the next generation.
You know more than I do, so
I think that's the next generation after Eisner.
Well, there was Kubert, and then Buscema was another generation forward.
Right, but Joe Kubert kept going. That was the whole thing. They were contemporaries because Joe Kubert just never gave up. Huh?
And Kubert dedicated his life to teaching others,
which is what started the Kubert School,
which is the only accredited school of cartoon art.
Yeah.
And Mike Chen and the brothers are keeping that tradition going. And you can see it in the power of their graduates and their teachers. I think Lee Weeks is one of their graduates and their teachers.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, they have graduates all over Marvel and DC right now.
Emma, Tom Mandrake.
Yep. Well, the brothers, Adam Kubert is drawing the new Wolverine series right now.
Nice.
So,
that's cool.
Or Andy. I can't keep them. I have a hard time telling them apart.
Oh, those guys with A's at the beginning of their name.
Was it their style or their name similarity?
Their names and their styles.
And their style, okay.
Yeah,
exactly right. They both owe a lot to their father.
Yeah.
As it should be. And I think that's a toast right there.
I agree.
Thank you, guys.
But yeah, it was just interesting to me that they were the two that stayed. They did not switch companies. Of course, I don't think Jack would have switched companies if he wasn't treated as badly as he was at Marvel. I think he would have stayed at Marvel forever. but somehow Joe was managed to get away. Well, I guess Joe just didn't create. Joe was a draftsman. But
Well, he was an editor, though.
Do we still have
John, not Joe.
Right.
Joe.
Do we still have 9 or 10 followers who
we're down to 7 now.
Okay, I can't tell.
If anybody has opinions, we would love to see them.
Yes.
It's not supposed to be all about us.
I love my daughter's statement about 20 minutes ago. The fantasy of instructions is great for dreaming.
That's a beautiful statement.
Right? And this is what both my daughters do with their kids. Before they go to bed, they all read. And this should never, ever be a lost art.
But it is.
Well, we have to do something about it.
Yeah, we do.
I remember that we read, Morgan, you're going to have to help me out. I think it was Lord of the Rings that we read before bed every night. It was either Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter.
That'll carry you through a few years.
Matt Sweeney's daughter is reading Harry Potter now.
Yeah.
He's on the second book. He's Matthew, who's named after Matthew, by the way. And
his name is on your wall.
And his name, because when they moved into their beautiful, spacious park area in Pennington, New Jersey, I moved across the common area into their house to save a few bucks and have Matthew, every time he comes into the house, go, "But Zeta, this is my room. Why did you mess it up?"
That's fabulous.
Yeah, so he's on the second book of Harry Potter now. For Hanukkah, I gave him the first 5 books of the Hardy Boys.
And how old is your Matthew?
Matthew, he's 8.
8. And
he's through them all now. And so now I'm looking at giving him the next 6 for his birthday.
Cool.
5 or 6.
Awesome.
But we have to give what we had. And then we have to have the ability to accept what they give. So I'm reading Dog Man. What the heck is Dog Man? And I read, when Jeannie was growing up, Mercedes Lackey. Only because Jeannie was into Mercedes Lackey. And so I read it. And when
Mercedes Lackey and Wendy Peeney are very similar in their designs and their storytelling. Very similar.
I agree.
Yep.
I had not thought about that before, but because I haven't read Mercedes Lackey in a long time. But looking at it now, I do see the similarities between, because even the way that they handle relationships and things like that are more what one would think of as open-minded scenarios. They both did it, and they both did it without making a big deal out of it. Exactly. It was just natural.
Exactly.
And
it's just
even with that, Wendy is very rigid in her political views.
Really?
She's rigid.
And everybody should adopt them.
In a very open-minded way. She's rigid. But not like she wants other people to think the way she does. Who doesn't?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I like your daughter
because she's very rigid in her political views, which I almost 80 or 90% agree with. So it doesn't seem bad to me.
I had a conversation with her just earlier this week, so I get it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where I was like,
I did see you on her line.
But Wendy, yeah.
I follow as much of Wendy and Richard as I can.
Huh?
I follow as much of Wendy and Richard as I can.
Yeah.
It was real fun for me when I got back into comics this time around, because we opened up, and then the next month Sandman Overture came out, the new Neil Gaiman book, And then
Okay.
right after that, the new ElfQuest book came out. And it was like, okay, they're welcoming me back home. They didn't want to feel lonely.
Did you feel like you were in the Back to the Future trilogy?
Yeah. It was more like, they're welcoming me home. They didn't want me to feel lonely.
I love your daughter's statement.
Yeah.
Reading fast enough, and I took the book away from you so I could find out what happened.
Yeah.
By the way, the way the generations should work.
Exactly.
You're old.
Right.
I'm taking over. Yeah.
Doing it right.
I think we still read it to Taylor, but Morgan got ahead of us.
Because that makes sense.
Because we had to stop every once in a while because I always had to go downstairs to get apple juice for Taylor at nighttime right before bed.
Mary Beth, I really thought I was only going to have one drink. And with that ice up here, I figured, but now it's only a half a finger instead of a full finger.
You've had enough fingers of your drink to start leaving syllables out of my name, so I know you've had plenty.
Marita Beth.
There you go.
I went back in time, I processed, and I came back.
See, that's the good thing about a good drink is it lets you time travel.
Hey, that plays into last week's show.
Matthew is named after Matthew Zedek. And both his family and I were very honored when Jeannie chose to name Matthew Matthew. And one of the books that Matthew read and would tease Jeannie about was A Door into Summer, a Robert Heinlein book where a man goes back in time and tells the girl who's young.
You get to see you do the second bottle.
and tells and is infatuated with this younger girl and lets her know that when he finds the door into summer, he's going to come back and they're going to get married.
Aww.
And Matthew always would say to Jeannie, I'm going to find the door into summer for you.
That's cute.
I think Jeannie's really happy with Kevin. We're not trying to sow any, and Matthew is wonderful. Okay, Ron, bring us back to the present.
Where are we? We're probably past the point where we're interesting and we're just interesting to ourselves. My girlfriend's sister and I have a phrase that we're funny to us, and that doesn't mean we're funny to anybody else.
We're still keeping 8 people entertained. I know one of them is Morgan.
He's doing 12 other things at the same time. That hardly counts.
Well, she does at least, she's listening close enough to reply on things like this.
Do you have anybody who's actually a collected customer who has any questions or wants to know more about one of these books?
You don't really even have to be a customer, just somebody that has any questions that you want to ask. We really do want it to be a participatory show.
Yeah.
Other than just the 3 of us participating, but we enjoyed that. Although, one of the things James said he really liked about the last show was that us just talking about the industry. Yeah.
Really? So, that's fun? So James, if you're still with us, James, weigh in on that. Why is that fun, and how can we make that keep happening or make that better for you? How does that work for you? Why? We would love to understand it better so we can maybe keep doing it.
And James, maybe you piggyback on what my daughter wrote.
Good question.
It's just amazing the difference between the amount of titles and how many of each title the industry has undergone, meaning how many are available and how many each sell.
So,
yeah.
That brings another question to my mind too. So help me remember. I have another question for you.
Because we just had the write up in the paper today about the live sales that we did.
I was so proud.
But that was one of the things that I brought up, is that our normal week pre-COVID-19 was between 80 and 120 titles a week
of new
stuff. 80 to 120 new books every week. And so this week was the very first week of new comics, and we had 20 books come out.
Wow.
And it was all Marvel, all DC and other press. Marvel didn't put anything out. So next week is Marvel's first week. So it'll be interesting. And we had Wednesday was probably 3 times higher than I was expecting.
So as devil's advocate on this subject, is that maybe better?
Yes.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying, is that what I'm hoping after all of this is that we have a more compact publishing schedule that will actually be stuff that people want to read. I have had, over the last 2 months of no books coming out, I've had a lot of people come in and say, I need to drop this. And they're always very apologetic, but it's like, I need to drop this from my list. I realized that I haven't read the last 8 issues, and I finally read them.
I read them. I don't want it anymore.
Yeah. And
it's awful, but great. It's awful, but great. So it you know what, it harkens back to what Scott writes in Understanding Comics about the simpler,
yes,
the visual, the simpler things are, the deeper you can get into the message.
Well, not only that,
20 titles coming out every week. All of your customers can consider every single freaking one of them, instead of looking at a wall of titles going, where do I go? Wait, I only read Marvel. I'm going to look at Avengers, and I'm going to look at X-Men, and I can't look at anything else. Now they can look at everything because there's only 20 titles.
Well, the other side of that too is that, are there really 80 quality creators out there? I'm sorry, but there were a lot of the books that were being put out by Marvel and DC that were less than, they were sold because of the character alone and not the story or the
fun. Is it stimulating? Does it make me think beyond my typical box?
Yeah.
If it doesn't, why is it there?
Right.
When I opened up the first store in the I-95 marketplace in 1982, my daughter's younger brother, we used to joke, it was 120 square feet, and I could fit all of the new books on 4 shelves, about 10 books per shelf.
In 1982, sure you could.
1982, for the entire month. Yeah. And as it got to be more and more titles, we prayed for a skip week because that's when we would make our money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I started being friends with Ronnie, before I was even working for him, comics were a tiny part of the business. It was comics, it was games, it was costumes, it was records, it was posters, it was all this other stuff. And it wasn't until the explosion in the early 90s, really, or 88, 89, where like comics were like, oh my God, there's so many comics, we can't do all this other stuff. We're going to concentrate on comics.
Well, if you think about the big Berry Street store, we had 180 linear feet of 8 rows of comics. 180 linear feet of 8 rows of comics.
All by themselves. Yep.
It's 600 facings.
Yep.
Is that 600 facings, Ron?
180 linear. No, it was more than that.
More than that.
No,
yeah. Yeah. Because there were 8 because there was more than 100 across.
Yeah.
And 8 rows.
And it was eight deep or 8 tall.
It was.
So it was at least 800, a little over 800 facings.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we were lucky in Texas because real estate is cheap. There's no way that you can do that up, where you were.
No, absolutely. We had 7 stores in a warehouse at our peak. And me not being a businessman, when I brought a businessman and we went bankrupt, the first thing he started doing was closing down stores.
Yeah.
So I became a social worker and a therapist.
Well, I say the same thing because I wasn't a businessman when I opened, and when I closed down, I went and got my MBA. So when I started back, it was kind of like, okay, I know everything I did wrong.
Now let's do this.
My ex-wife got her MBA. I think she was done by then.
Jacob just, put up there, it's astounding trying to picture how to display new this week alone could be an entire wall of a store. And it is. We no longer display all the new books as one section. We just include it in the wall with a new tag on it. Right. And then behind the counter, we have 10 across, 5 down. So we have 50 books that we put behind the counter that we spotlight as new this week.
Nice.
But that means that there's a lot of titles now there are some titles that I do subs only. If it's a title that's been out, especially from Marvel or DC, for 5 years, I know how many I'm going to sell. Unless the store is closing down or a new person is in town, I'm not going to sell an extra one. I don't need one for the wall.
Right.
After the initial hit of Superman or Batman or whatever it was, I found virtually no benefit to a major motion picture to my store other than people coming in and going, oh, this is what a comic book store is. In terms of unit sales, rarely was there any benefit. When you get a Stargirl or a Teen Titans on the Warner Network or the Arrowverse, do you get any bump in sales now?
It's really interesting. Sometimes yes, but it's never with the big publishers. So when Lock and Key hit on Netflix, my Lock and Key sales went crazy. Right. When Umbrella Academy hit on Netflix, I sold so many Umbrella Academy trades. The Boys on Amazon.
Yeah.
I have sold year to date since the show started. So I guess it's not year to date because it was last year. I've sold 83 copies of a $29.99 volume 1 of The Boys.
That's exciting.
Okay, I never would have sold that without the TV show.
You'll have to tell me what that is.
The Boys, you may or may not like it. It's The Boys. The Boys was a very graphic, violent and sexual comic book that they toned way down for the series on TV. And the series is considered one of the most graphic and sexual series on Amazon. So it's written by Garth Ennis, if that gives you any idea.
Okay.
It originally started
at times.
Yeah, it originally started at DC with Vertigo, and Vertigo said, "No, we're not going to do this anymore." And so then it went to Wildstorm at Image, and Image said, "No, we're not going to do this anymore." And it wound up at Dynamite, And Nick said, "Yeah, we'll do anything." Because Nick Barucci is Nick Barucci,
I'm looking at Morgan's post.
Me too.
I'm just wondering if this is a promotional value, if Marita and I are back, that maybe there are people who would be interested in Marita Beth, who would be in. Oh, come on, Betty. I know who you are.
It's Betty Page. Oh, I was going to get that picture and put up here.
Oh no!
Wow!
No!
You're right that there is a people who would be interested in understanding where comics have come from.
And I think
that. So I think it's interesting. I am somewhat gratified and confused, and maybe Morgan and I should have a conversation between now and next week about what she really means, because I'm very intrigued by the knowledge that maybe we're not being boring. See, I keep thinking when we go into the history and the past and the blah, 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 that's when it gets boring for people. But if that's what's exciting,
and my son-in-law's
comment. We not only do that shit, we know people to talk to come do that shit with us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course. Jim would probably not come on, being the modest man that he is.
Really?
No one who knows the history of comic retailing better than Jim Hanlon.
That's true.
He's just.
Has he decided to be shy?
Pardon?
Has he decided to be shy?
Well, yeah, he has for the last 10 years.
Being shy.
He's back living in Staten Island. I've only gotten to see him once because of COVID virus, and I miss him. Every time I see him, I want to just hug him and not let go.
Right.
I don't have that feeling towards Brian Hibbs, but I understand his place in the industry. I have that feeling towards Paul Levitz. I just think that Paul did a phenomenal job as a camp director, herding us all into a good place. I still feel the wound of Carol Kalish's death, and Carol Kalish, a vice president of Marvel Comics.
Remember her?
And that's still a very big wound in me and in the industry.
Yeah.
You brought up Paul Levitz, and Paul Levitz is a big wound for me. He's not. I mean, he's still with us, but the way that DC treated him, and I often, the two people that I really wish were still at DC that are no longer at DC are Paul Levitz and Bob Wayne. I mean, I miss both of them so much at DC. I did say Bob Wayne.
My relationship with Bob Wayne is in.
I don't think you would miss Bob Wayne.
Retail Association, Eastern Region, whatever, did their first education seminar, and Marvel agreed immediately to fund it, and Bob said,
right.
It's not our budget. And I wrote a letter to Jeanette Kahn. And it's funny because I thought of Bob as a failed retailer in those days, and I think of myself as a failed retailer. So, but Bob called me and said, Steve.
Bob was one of my direct competitors. So,
and you don't do that. You don't call my boss.
Yeah.
Or copy my boss. I said, Bob, what did you want me to do? And they don't. But over the years, I've begun to understand how important Bob was to the medium and how his perspective as a retailer grew over the years rather than staying stuck in the stagnant pool.
We would have never had the graphic novels graphic novels would have never been the thing that they were if it weren't for Bob Wayne.
You're right.
He's the one that convinced them
Absolutely.
to overprint Dark
Absolutely.
Knight and Watchmen.
Yes.
So that it would always be in stock. And then once the publishers saw that that could happen, then now the dirty side effect of that is you go over to Image Comics, and all Image Comics are produced for a graphic novel. They are 6-issue storylines that can, like Magic Order, and it's a $9.99 graphic novel introduction that is a cheap price point, which we could never convince DC to do a $9.99 graphic novel, but Image does it. Everything is done in 6-issue arcs at Marvel, DC, and Image now are done in 6-issue arcs so that they can be graphic novels.
Correct.
It makes sense, though. If you're going to get new readers, especially if you don't print enough, which we're encouraging, and retailers don't want them to overprint either. We're encouraging them to print only what they need. Graphic novels are the answer. So if 6-issue story arcs are the norm, then we have an entry point every 6 months.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing is there's no way that I would order an original graphic novel at $12.99, $14.99. I would not order 6 to 10 copies of it.
Right. No.
Correct.
I have a floppy that I sell 30 copies of. I'm going to order at least 4 copies of that trade paperback because
I just have to share that we've reached the point in the night where when I reach for my glass, sometimes I get my microphone.
I thought you were doing a science experiment.
I'm just sharing. This is important to me for you to know. We have reached the point in the night. My water bottle is empty and my glass still has a little in it. Tink. Yeah.
I've done a half a bottle.
So Jacob, it could be from growing up, seeing people at functions and hearing names. So Joe, Jacob, Gene, who participated me on the multiple times I tried to revive my store Image. They met people. Yep. Whether it be Neil Gaiman or whether it be Ron Friends. And they met people and they got to know them. In many ways, Brett Breeding and Ron Friends are members of our family, even though we hear and speak to Brett more.
I have always been jealous of you being in the Northeast and being so close to so many of those people. When we were down here in Texas, and we did not have that same access.
Congratulations. Along for years. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say that we didn't have access because we did have Kerry Gamble and Steve Irwin.
Yes.
And they were wonderful people. But you had, everybody up there. You were close enough to New York to be next to everybody. And then Marita Beth, I don't know if you noticed, but Kevin is watching now too.
Is he? Good. I poked him, gave him a hard time about not being here.
It's a token.
What?
We need Jeffrey Vaughn on here too.
I know, right?
Because Jeffrey's the big wig at
messages this week.
Yeah, Kevin, tell Jeffrey he needs to get on.
Right now.
There was a time when, if I wanted Chris Claremont, I could figure out how to.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just had to say, I love you,
Kevin. Kevin, if I meet you, I'll love you. But whether it was Chris Claremont or Graham Nolan or Joe Staten or whoever it was, at one point we were large enough to get the Falco were ever in for a day or two. And it was just a Marvel experience for our fan base to know that they could get to meet people before comic conventions were supernovas.
Right.
Yeah, that's the big difference right now. When I jumped back into comics again, I was used to the well, we can get, the big people to come in, and we will get people excited, but the artists and writers are business people too, and they have to watch what they do with their time, and so they don't really do as much store appearances as they used to.
Well, there aren't as many.
But I'm hoping that with
it worth their while. Think about it. There aren't nearly as many stores who can make it worth their while.
Right. Well, no, yeah. But I'm hoping with the COVID right now and absolutely no conventions going on, that maybe that will balance out a little bit.
And even if it's in forums like this.
Yeah.
Where somebody would come in and spend an hour or two with your customer base.
Well, we do a graphic novel club as well. So our graphic novel, the graphic novel that we're doing this month is a book called We Can Never Go Home, and it's written by Matthew Rosenberg, who is one of my all-time favorite writers right now.
Really,
Matthew, we all need to read this book for next week. Earlier, honey, is we need to know what we're doing next week so we can announce it tonight.
Well, no, wait. That's a different program because Matthew Rosenberg is coming on board.
Okay.
And actually,
Matthew Rosenberg, isn't he a director of marketing or something at Marvel?
No.
Was he one of their
he was an intern at Marvel?
It's a common.
He worked at what's Midtown. He worked at Midtown. He sold comics at Midtown. But he's a writer now. He started out at a comic company called Black Mask, and he did this story. This was his very first published work that we're doing as he's written X-Men. He's writing Punisher. What is he writing right now? He writes a bunch of stuff for Marvel right now. But this is still and it's in your box, Marita Beth. I did bring you the book. Oh. But
this box, or
you may have sent it back with me as one that you weren't interested in.
What's it called?
We Can Never Go Home.
No, I don't remember.
but anyway, this is a story about I will bring it to you. Yes. It's a story about a young boy and a young girl that meet each other, find out they have these powers. And he also wrote a book called 4 Kids and a Bank, which I think I did send home with you, which I described as Stranger Things meets Sopranos. And now he wrote my all-time favorite Punisher story at Marvel, where he stole the War Machine from Nick Fury.
I do not have his book, but you tell me about it.
You can imagine Punisher with the War Machine armor, and he goes over to the country that is harboring all of the Hydra agents and decides to take them out.
So I have a little bit of a guilt complex when Ronnie brings me a pile of books and says, "You'll love these." I always feel like I should pick 2 or 3 because I don't have any money. So I'm like, I want to just pick 2 or 3 and read those and be true to those. That one you're referencing now, I think, is one that wasn't in my top 3, so I didn't keep it.
Okay, well, I will bring it back to you. But that's part of our graphic novel club, and Matthew's coming on to talk to us about the book.
I want.
Okay, I'll bring it to you. And one of the things that I meant to do before this show is actually, Okay, Steve, you were talking about how you weren't really a businessman.
No, I suck.
Yeah.
Even in the therapy business, I suck.
If I were a little bit more of a businessman, I would have taken the time out today to actually put the two books that we talked about, Mouse and Understanding Comics, online with a link to this right now, which I always meant to do, but I just never found the time to do it.
The old cult movies. Let's do the time warp today. Right? You can put the link on next week.
Yeah.
The nook to the left.
Talking about it. We'll get them into it, and then we'll talk about other stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, we do have Matthew. I've become friends with Matthew online. He lives in New York, so I don't get to see him.
Mm-hmm.
Although he did come to our store last year. Yeah, it was last year for Free Comic Book Day. We had Matthew. We had Matthew Rosenberg. Huh?
Matthew is a very rich name.
We had Matthew. We had Donnie Cates, who is the bad boy of comics right now, and Ed Bryson at our store for Free Comic Book Day last year. But and they were writing X-Men #1 last year and Venom #1 last year. So they were the two big books. But the only reason they did that on Free Comic Book Day was because Dallas Fan Expo actually had their convention on Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Already in town.
They did.
I talked them into coming over on Saturday, and they were gracious enough to come over on Saturday to do that. But yeah, Matthew was one of the very first creators that understood that at a small publisher, if he reached out to retailers, he could sell a lot more books. And it was probably because the time that he spent working at Midtown Comics, hand selling books. So Matthew sent us an email when We Can Never Go Home first came out, which was like 6 years ago. He sent us an email with a PDF copy of the comic, and he sent us a mail with a couple of stickers. And so we read the comic. The week that it came out, that #1 outsold X-Men at our store.
Wow.
And it was because all of our staff got behind it. It was such an awesome book that it was well written, it was well drawn, and it was so fresh that we just hand sold the hell out of it.
Awesome.
So one of my favorite stories about Jim Hanley is me saying, "Hey, Jim, I sold 100 copies of X-Men this week." And he said, "How many copies of Love and Rockets?" I said, 3 or 4. He said, "We put the X-Men in the bathroom." In the bathroom as it is on the shelf. We sell 100 copies of Love and Rockets.
I have heard him say, "I can sell that from the bathroom. Tell me when you can sell this." I've heard him do that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was, and I have to give a lot of credit to the manager of my TCU store back then was Candace, and she loved the book when she read it. And she just, we talked about the orders. I ordered enough that, we could sell that many.
One of my favorite comics of all times is Road to Perdition. At the point that came out, I was primarily in our Delran store.
Well, that was Max Collins, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we sold more in Delran than we did throughout the entire company at that time. And we sold more than we sold.
And that wasn't your biggest store.
Yeah. When you're a fan of the book and it's of that high quality, it's easy to sell.
Yeah.
Passion sells. You know, and to see it become what it became.
I was thinking,
for Max.
You were obviously ahead of the time because it became a hit movie with Tom Hanks.
Yes.
Yep.
And Paul Newman.
Yep.
It may have been one of those last films.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And it was actually a pretty faithful comic adaptation.
Absolutely. And Max is the first person to ever do a movie adaptation of his comic graphic novel. Right? Even though he didn't write a movie script. It's fascinating. Look, I think if we go back to the original stuff, comics, Understanding Comics, Mao's A Contract with God, these are great books because they elicit passion from us. And we're then able to provide that passion for those that we care about, our customers. And our customers prefer us to be passionate about what we're selling to them than just the next issue of Batman times 8.
I've always told my staff that I don't want you to be a salesman. I want you to be passionate about what you like.
Just care about what you and people will buy that.
Yeah, if you tell me what you like, I will order it, and then you will become a salesman. You know? Yeah. But I don't want you to sell something you don't like.
No.
Correct.
You know, X-Men will always sell itself.
Right.
You know, although right now I have to say, with Jonathan Hickman writing it, X-Men is an absolutely astounding story right now.
Who's writing it? Who's drawing it?
I haven't.
Jonathan Hickman's writing it. R.B. Silva is drawing the main series.
Huh, I don't know.
But it is pretty interesting, especially with today's political climate, because the X-Men have basically they've moved to the island of Krakoa, and Krakoa has produced a plant that can cure almost any disease.
Okay.
So the X-Men have decided that they are a government of their own, and for any government that will actually acknowledge them as a sovereign nation, they will share this plant, which will provide all kinds of medicinal benefits. For those nations that do not, they won't. And the best issue so far, Jonathan Hickman is a wonderful writer. It's just, you know, his stuff on East of West is just awesome. But there's a scene where Apocalypse, Magneto, and Cyclops go to the UN and have a meeting with the UN and the World Trade Organization. And it's just those three, and they've decided that all mutants are sovereign. So that every mutant, even mutants like Sabretooth and Apocalypse, the bad guys, Magneto is part of the ruling council. The other interesting part about this is that Jean Grey and Cyclops have a house on the moon, basically, because Krakoa allows them to the Krakoan gates allow them to teleport anywhere. So it's really funny. It's like Jean Grey has a room here, Cyclops has a room here, and Wolverine has a room over here. So it's like Jean Grey has a single bedroom, and Cyclops, and Wolverine. And so they've pretty well acknowledged that this is a triad that exists.
Does the Watchman? Does the Watcher ever play chess with any of them?
They're not in the well. Okay, so in the time that you've been out, the Watcher has been killed.
Oh no!
Yes, the Watcher has been killed. There was a story called Original Sin, and somebody killed the Watcher. So the new Watcher is actually Nick Fury, the old Nick Fury, the white Nick Fury. He is the new.
And Nick Fury is in?
Nick Fury, because he only has one eye. Yeah.
Okay.
And he is the new Watcher. And his son, who is the Samuel Jackson Nick Fury.
Oh, really?
Is the Nick Fury that is on Earth. That's his son. But Nick Fury is the Watcher that is on the moon.
Okay, then.
So that was another absolutely fabulous Jonathan Hickman story.
In a nutshell.
Huh?
7 years in a nutshell.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, the scene where Magneto and Professor X and Apocalypse go in. Apocalypse has been alive since the Egyptian times, and the dialogue that they have with the nations at the UN is so fabulous. It is just, it's incredible. But anyway, the new X-Men is absolutely wonderful. You have one of the other titles is called the Marauders. Okay, so you have the X-Men, and they're doing all the trade with the plants from Krakoa that are medicinal. And then you have Sebastian Shaw, who used to be the Black King. He's the one that handles the black market trade of all of the plants for the countries that don't really want to acknowledge them, but want the plants anyway. So there's black market trade that's handled through the Hellfire Club, which is through Sebastian Shaw, who is the Black King. You have the White Queen, which sits on the council also, Emma Frost. And you have Kitty Pryde is the leader of the Marauders, who works for the White Queen. And she's the ship that goes out and rescues all of the mutants from the countries that don't recognize mutants as sovereign people. So it is just a phenomenal story right now. And it is the best-selling Marvel book out there, again, which X-Men should be, I think. X-Men or Venom is a very close second. Donny Cates is the new bad boy of comics. He's the writer that he is another one that interned at Marvel Comics. So he's a longtime comic fan, and he has a wonderful way of taking old stories. He and Jason Aaron both. And Al Ewing is another one who's from England. We had Al Ewing in the store early last year. He's from England.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. I'm going off on a tangent. But we had Al Ewing in the store, so I got to talk to him a lot. And he has the most encyclopedic knowledge of 60s and 70s Marvel comics. And he is tying together storylines and characters from 40 years ago into a new story right now called Empire that is just wonderful. And that's what Jason Aaron and Donny Cates are so good at. Jason Aaron wrote my second favorite Thor series. Walt Simonson will always be, well, I won't say always, but Walt Simonson right now, the Walt Simonson run is my favorite Thor run. But it's not very far underneath that.
if you look back through the years, there have been writers who have been able to take a look at history, condense it, bring it to the present, and then have a fabulous run, and then leave it for the next generation.
Yeah, and that's what Jason Aaron did on Thor.
Great job on Thor. And then Walt Simonson jumped in, and it was, oh my God.
Yeah. And then Jason Aaron took what Walt Simonson did, and it was, oh my God. And then he handed it off to Donny Cates. Now, Donny Cates is kind of cool because he's from Texas. He grew up in Garland.
That's not why he's cool.
Huh?
That's not why he's cool.
But no, why he's cool is because he wrote one of the best father-son stories I have ever read with a graphic novel for Image called God Country, which has been optioned and it will be a movie. It was phenomenal. And Marvel read it and said, come over here, guy. We had him in the store. Almost everything that Donny Cates wrote for independent press before he became Marvel was based in Texas because that's what he knew.
Yeah,
makes sense.
So he wrote God Country, which was based in Texas. He wrote a series for Image called Redneck, which was about a clan of vampires running a barbecue joint in East Texas, because that's what vampires would do. You run a barbecue joint.
Look at your message stream. So I'm just beginning to wonder whether we've been on too long and nobody cares. And Kevin went and lassoed Jeff.
We're still at 10 people.
Oh, really?
So
Jeff should be joining us, and Jeff Vaughn comes on.
Right.
Who is Jeff?
Do you
Jeffrey Vaughn.
Are you just waiting for us to wrap it up, or are you into this?
So Jeffrey, we need to bring on as a guest at some point. Jeffrey is the Jeffrey, tell us what your title is, but he's the main one at Overstreet Publications right now with Gemstone. So
before he says anything else, I'm just going to acknowledge my cohorts tonight. Ronnie and Steve both have the superpower of they never need to pee. I'm going to leave again.
The difference between wine and bourbon. That's the main difference between wine and bourbon.
Yes.
So, but yeah, it's Donnie, so Jason Aaron wrote this wonderful Thor run where he actually took the hammer away from Thor during Original Sin, the one where the Watcher got killed. Something was whispered into Thor's ear, and Thor felt he was no longer worthy to carry the hammer. So the hammer went to Jane Foster, and Jane Foster became Thor for a long time. But this was Jason Aaron's run on Thor, which was, like I said, just below Walt Simonson for me so far. And then Jason Aaron and Donny Cates have this deal, I think, where they say, hold my beer, I can do more than that. And so Jason Aaron handed Thor off to Donny Cates, which has only had 3 issues so far. But the first issue of Thor with Donny Cates, no, Kevin, it's the difference between bourbon and wine. Bourbon, you don't have to go. But the different, the very first issue of Thor with Donny Cates has Galactus falling and crushing most of Asgard. So it's like it just grabs you from there, and then Galactus makes Thor a herald of Galactus. So,
Ronnie, just to be clear, I didn't expect it to happen without ice. But this is it.
Applause, please. Yay!
See, the difference is I keep a Yeti full of ice with me.
Oh,
So I can always just put ice in my drink.
I hope for the future.
Well, I'm pretty sure that what I just returned wouldn't have fit in the bottle it came out of.
Well, and Morgan is giving away my secret that I'm secretly a camel and doesn't drink enough water anyway. I drink maybe, it's if I drink 12 ounces of water in a week, that is a really good week.
Just like that, and then I discovered LaCroix, and I'm a LaCroix fan now. I don't drink as much as I should, but I drink more water than I used to. Because
I'm guessing my daughters have gone to sleep and are not revealing any more of my secrets.
Well, see, my daughter's on the West Coast, so it's still early for her.
Right. Well, if I didn't already say it, Jeff, I'm really glad you're here for a few minutes at least. Thank you for coming. And thank you for doing the lassoing, because I know it was like...
Before we close up, whenever we do, I'll tell you, this is so phenomenal being together with the two of you. I just love it. I wish we would have.
Just want Ronnie to make sure he lets us know when it's just the three of us, because at that point I can relax a little and not care how stupid I look.
Hey, we are still at 9 viewers, so we lost one somewhere along the way. But
Are my daughters
still at 9 viewers?
Or
One
my
of his
daughter?
kids probably put children to bed.
I know.
That's usually what I do is I keep on going. Like when we do the live shows, the sales, I go until there's less than 10 viewers, and then I know that I'm not going to make a lot of money after that.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
you're not making any money at all on this.
No,
Yeah.
but that's the whole thing is we do 6 shows a week where we sell books. So there needs to be a show where we're not actively selling. Yeah.
We're just plain fun.
Hopefully James and somebody else might have been interested enough that they ordered an Understanding Comics or a mouse, but if
Well,
not,
James will come into the store and get Understanding Comics. So
And did you read what Jeffrey said to you, Marita Beth?
oh, I read some of what Jeffrey said. What did he say?
he says the internet is forever. I thought the internet was for porn.
Jeff, that's mean.
That's me.
Mean, because now he's making me think. I have to be better behaved. Is
So-
that really what you want? Is to remind me to be better behaved?
So Jeff is also young enough to know that in the beginnings there was World of Warcraft, and World of Warcraft said that the internet was for porn.
That
There
was
was a whole song about it. There was a musical about it. Huh?
Avenue Q. The
Yeah,
internet. Porn.
yeah.
The
The internet is for porn.
Grab your double click for porn.
There was also the Superman the musical, but back a lot of years.
Okay, now that we could go into the
Superman.
who wrote Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex, if you want to go there.
Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex?
Yep.
I don't know.
It was
Sneeze throughout this entire show.
it was somebody that wrote Tarzan stories. God, I wish I could remember. It was a science fiction writer, Larry Niven. Larry Niven wrote a short story called Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex, and it talked about super sperm. And it talked about the thing that would happen.
I'm running out. Otherwise, I would drink to that.
You didn't have a backup bottle?
I do have 2 more downstairs. But I'm collecting bourbon these days. So I have 2 more McCloud, but I've never tried a Jack Daniel's Rye, and I've never tried Eagle Ryes.
There is no price guide for collecting bourbon. I don't think it's a good investment.
You don't think so?
I think you should just drink it.
Well, I'll pick one for next week if Ron will have us back.
Ron probably needs new faces. I don't know. I'm like, you should stay and I should go. And somebody else should come in. Jeff.
So remember, we can add. We don't have to quit. So we also have.
Is that what you're saying? You have up to 6.
Goodness.
We have Angel Envy.
I will look that up.
What's Angel's Envy?
A really good bourbon. We have Jack Daniel's 100 proof.
I've never had that. I have a minor case coming next week.
Good and bourbon don't go in the same sentence for me.
We have Blood Oath.
I've never had that.
That one's really hard to find.
Really? I just bought 2 minor cases to come next week.
Elijah Craig.
Ah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That looks like that had some.
We have alcohol.
Did you just show a mostly empty bottle of Elijah Craig? Because it was like clear.
Have a little left.
Oh, okay. You showed like we can see your hand right through it. I'm like, oh, that's not.
No. And this is what I have in my room with me. So in the liquor closet, I have Pappy's. I have.
Wait. Stop. Even in Texas, as backward as we are, the liquor stores are open.
Yes.
So what we need to decide right now, I think, is what you're reading this week and what books you're going to focus on next Thursday night. You can invite Jeff if he's available, because Jeff would be an awesome guest. And that would be a fun continuation of the tradition of he was with us on the comments last week. Let's invite him to be a guest. That would be awesome.
I don't
know. We have to pick a book.
I don't know if I can find my copy, but I'd like to look at God
Loves, Man Kills.
In relation to the John Hickman stories.
That would be pretty interesting.
Okay, because I'm not familiar with Hickman, but I thought that the work that Brent Anderson and Chris Claremont did was brilliant on that.
Hickman just took it to a current political state.
Okay.
So
here's a question. I don't know what I've done with my understanding comics book.
Hey Jeff, if you're listening, are you willing to be a guest next week?
So here's a question. Major question.
You don't collect bourbon, you rent it.
Tundra.
Do what?
Tundra hasn't been a thing for a long time. Who publishes this amazing book now, Ron? Who publishes this now?
She caught that Avenue Q reference. Which of us gave an Avenue Q reference?
Whoever said.
It's William Morrow, and this is the cover of it now.
Okay, great.
Our green screen is weird. Oh, there it is. Okay. Who publishes it?
William Morrow, but it's also printed by, it's carried by Hachette.
Who?
Hachette. Hachette. That's who I order it from.
So you get it directly from a publisher I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
Okay. But you can get it. You still get it. You still keep it in stock.
Yes.
In print.
Yes. But this is the cover now.
Okay. This is the old
Jeff remembers Tundra Comics.
What?
Jeff remembers Tundra Comics.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Jeff was with us when we were when
Hero,
Hero
a long time ago. Yeah.
before Collected, but when
Yeah.
Hero. Yeah, Tundra's been out of business now. They went out. They actually
Okay.
went out about the same time as the music did.
Now, do you
There
want
was a reference earlier, and I couldn't work it in, but the Words and Pictures, the Museum for Sequential
Right.
Art.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
okay, do you want to hear the most exciting news though?
What?
Yes.
The show, The Toys That Made Us on
Yes, I love that show.
Okay. The very
Oh,
first
that show made.
hold on, let me tell the story. I'm the one that brought it up. I get to tell it.
Okay, you go.
Story was the first time that Eastman and Laird have talked to one another in the last 20 years.
Really?
25 years.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
That's
And the second part to that is they are actually doing a new Turtles book together.
Oh my God.
That we're doing an exclusive cover on.
I'll take one.
So happy. So happy.
Yes, but it's called The Last Ronin, and it is, we don't know which turtle it is, but it's a post-apocalyptic tale. Splinter and all of the turtles are dead except for one of them. And that one is seeking vengeance on the people that killed everybody else.
Ooh.
For anybody of my age, and it's unlikely there is anybody of my age on this. It's like Frank Sinatra bringing Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin together on the telephone.
It totally is. It's exactly like that. It's exactly.
It is. I am so excited about it. And as soon as I heard about it, we contacted IDW and said, we're going to actually do 4 exclusive covers to the first issue.
Wow.
But there's going to be 4 covers that we'll do. I have a consortium. We have a consortium of retailers that do exclusive covers together because print runs are pretty high. So we share we spread the burden. But we will have exclusive covers for it.
And COVID-19 has kept me from having my weekly breakfast with Ronnie, which would have told me that in advance. God, now learned all that. That's exciting.
Free Comics in Philadelphia. They may be interested in getting into that.
So exciting.
Yeah, that is really cool, Ron.
So we have, that's one of the things that is so different today about comics than when we were originally doing it now is the idea of buying print runs.
Yeah.
So you buy a print run and you get your own artist, you get your own cover. If you choose to put your name on it, you can. If you're a consortium like we are, we usually don't. But we get the artists that we want to get on the book. The next one we have coming out, I think, is called Sleeping Beauties, which is actually a Stephen King book coming out from IDW. Nice. And we'll have an exclusive cover on that. So,
who's the artist? Do you know?
The artist on the Sleeping, I do know, and I do. It's one of the hot cover artists right now. I can't remember.
See, I'd love to see on a title Sleeping Beauties, Wendy Pini and or Colleen Duran.
Yeah, unfortunately, neither of those names will sell the number of books that we need to sell to make a exclusive work.
I won't tell them.
Don't tell them that. But it's like the Venom that comes out next week. We have an exclusive cover for that. For like Marvel, you have to buy 3,000 comics. And if you buy 3,000 comics of a $4.99 book, then you get your own exclusive cover. So you can do the math there.
Not a book.
That's a lot of books. Yes.
If I had money, bad bet.
That's why there's 20 stores in our little group that we pool together, and 3,000 comics divided by 20 stores is a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
Jeffrey wants to know if he's the cover artist.
Pardon me?
He wants to know if he's the cover artist.
No, Jeff, you're not the cover artist of it. I'm sorry. But the new Stephen King book, we have a special cover coming out for that next week. We have a special cover coming out for Venom. We have a special cover coming out for the new Joker 80th anniversary book, which is painted by Ryan Brown over in England, which is gorgeous.
Could ask Jeff if he needs to be a cover artist on something. Maybe you can. We can work this out.
So Jeff hasn't answered yet if he wants to be a guest on our book.
What book?
A guest on our show. I'm sorry.
You haven't said what book. He might care.
So
I
Jeff,
gotta tell you, for typing in with you last week, doing this is the most fun that I've had in ages. And to see each of you is just a heartwarming thrill to me. I thank you for the opportunity.
Still 10 viewers. Thank you for the 10 viewers that are still watching us and allowing us to enjoy our friendship together.
And each of those viewers will get 3 or 4 more viewers next week. And if you'll have me, I would love to be here.
Well, it looks like we will add Jeffrey Vaughn next week too.
Yay!
So
I look forward to meeting Jeffrey.
Is your current plan like, do I follow?
And Morgan is saying that I am too tipsy to actually recognize that Jeffrey Vaughn said yes.
So what he's also saying is I should call you tomorrow and ask you, does that mean I'm out and he's in, or does that mean you have 4 next week?
No, we can have up to 35 people, I think, or something. Huh?
And I will talk to my daughters to see if they're willing to put me forward in this manner again.
They have been crucial to your popularity going. They're very important.
Waiting until we're done to actually eat the cherry, which is called a tipsy cherry. So, I'm waiting to the end.
Is that kind of like eating the worm at the bottom of a bottle of tequila?
No.
For vegetarians, yeah.
Old wives' tale bullshit thing. Oh, no.
No, I've eaten several worms at the bottom of mezcal.
You want to talk to me about why it's not a good idea? We'll talk about tequila and mezcal on another
I've eaten many worms at the bottom of the barrel.
Never trust a man who eats the worm.
So you're saying not to trust me?
I'm just saying you shouldn't eat the worm.
It's having a chocolate martini, rye martini at Frank Ferrante's show in Chicago, in which he played Caesar, but typically I see him doing the incredible embodiment of Groucho Marx.
Martini.
If you ever want to read that year's column.
Of a martini.
I'm loving rye and chocolate martinis ever since. I'm sorry to hurt your head.
Some other drink someone needs to have been inventive enough to come up with a name for, but it's not a martini. Oh.
You know what a martini is, right?
Chocolate Manhattan.
Vermouth.
No.
Martini.
A martini, I take a shot of vodka, I put an olive in my mouth, and I say vermouth.
For me. Yeah, no, that's not how it works. Yeah.
No, I pop an olive in my mouth, I take a shot of vodka, and I say vermouth. That's a martini.
This whole chocolate martini, strawberry martini, that's bullshit.
Okay, Jeffrey, what is a quarantini?
I saw that the other day. It's a quarantined version of
martini.
Yeah. He might have an actual recipe. I don't know, but I did see that just the other. It's very cute.
I will try it.
That is clever. Chocolate martini. That's not clever. That's somebody's poor attempt at marketing something.
Yeah, I meant Manhattan. I apologize. Not martini, Manhattan. The only martini in the world is with gin. And by the way, Jeffrey says, Beth, you have to be on. He didn't.
I love you, Jeff, and I will adore that experience. But it's all up to Ron, because this is all about Comics on the Rocks and Collected Your Pop Culture Headquarters. Hello, your host for this wonderful evening. Hopefully, those of you who are still hanging in there, who are not family, are actually having fun, and we'll be back. Those of you who are family, we love you for your dedication and your loyalty, and I'll hug you later.
And those who are family, please spread the word.
Yes.
Exactly that. I sent messages to I went through my whole Facebook friends list, which is 1,100 people. I don't think I know 1,100 people, but I have 1,100 people on my Facebook friends. And I went through and I sent to anybody that I thought might care. So next week I'll go through and send the people that I don't think will care. And we'll see what
I actually advertised this show on Craigslist.
Oh,
and we don't know who could be watching.
That might be what killed it.
We still have 10 people watching.
And who are they, Jeff?
Steve has 2 daughters, if they're still watching. I have 1 daughter. Huh? Steve has 2 daughters, if they're still watching, which I don't think they are. They haven't commented in a while.
No, they had
Morgan's still watching because it's still early for her.
It's still early in California.
So we have Jeff and we have Kevin.
Right.
That's only 5 people.
Because I guilted Kevin and Kevin guilted Jeff. So that's that.
But that's still 5 people. So there's another 5 people watching this that are having fun.
Oh, I hope so. They have it on in the background while they're
where by this time at night, I'd be watching Mr. Lucky. I'm almost done with it and on the next series. But you are more important.
Well, I'm glad that we're more important.
It's 10 minutes till normal across the board bedtime, so we should probably think about wrapping it up. But I have had a blast, and I couldn't possibly be happier sharing my time with the two of you gentlemen.
And I'm fascinated by watching me and seeing me as a Will Eisner character with the dress. If you look at enough of Will Eisner's stuff, it's the glasses that you can't see on. Okay. There's a reflection, a beard that comes down.
Help me. What's the name of the story that Will Eisner wrote that the guy that everybody thinks is dead, but he isn't? So he loses his apartment and he tries to tell the people in his apartment that he's still alive, but they don't believe him. And he goes to work and they don't believe him.
I just touched that book. But
wasn't that Origin of the Spirit?
No, it wasn't a spirit story. It was a slice of life story.
It's a standalone slice of life, like Contract of God is. It's not.
Was it The Building?
I'm not sure. Jeff thinks it's the Hunt for Red October.
No, Jeff, it's not the Hunt for Red October. It's not Rollerball. It's a Will Eisner story.
Building. There are a number.
Building sounds familiar, but I don't know if that's if the right storyline or not.
There are a number of the spirit stories that automatically come to my mind.
Right, because it was an overlying theme that he had with Dennis Cole.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did.
But
I'll try to look for it.
yeah, but
Me too.
that
But
was a
we need to
really
pick
good
a book.
story. Huh?
We need to pick a theme or a book for next week.
Okay. Hey Jeff, since you're going to be a Will Eisner's Rollerball, that would be pretty interesting. Okay, Jeff, since you're joining us, what would you like to?
The building too.
Yeah, I think it's the building. That was a story that had a lot of impact on me because it was one of those.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the invisible. It was the invisible something.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a book, The Invisibles, and it was actually also a 4-issue comic in which each story was about a protagonist that was essentially invisible to the rest of the world around him.
Right.
Clock tells me 21:56. That means I have 4 minutes. I'll be right back.
Oh, Jeffrey wants to do Why I Hate Saturn by Kyle Baker. Jeffrey, I'd like to keep it something that's still in print.
Oh, is that not in print?
No, Why I Hate Saturn isn't in print anymore. I love that book. But DC
Someone has to go to buy it and put it back in print.
Yeah.
I still like the idea of X-Men Past and Future.
Yeah, I think X-Men God Loves, Man Kills, and comparing it with what the X-Men are today with the John Hickman story. I think that's pretty cool. Because that'll keep the people that are interested in the new X-Men series.
Sure.
And then the X-Men God Loves, Man Kills has been reprinted so many times recently. Which it should be. Because that's
Brent is underrated. He's tremendous.
Yeah.
He really can tell a story.
I wish I knew what was going on with Astro City right now, because Kurt Busiek and Brent Anderson were doing that for a long time, and then I haven't seen one in a long while.
I haven't read one in a long time, but I did.
Jeffrey, hey Jeff, if you can talk about God Loves, Man Kills, we'll compare that because I'm pretty caught up on all of the new X-Men stuff. And Rita Beth will be caught up on all the new X-Men stuff because she's right down the street from me.
Great, because looking at what Jeff says, you have an incredible time from Neil Adams ending the series for a while.
Yeah.
Coming back with Len Wein and Cochran. Cochran's time on it.
Yep.
And going into John Burns.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just an amazing transition.
Chris Claremont.
There was a weird thing on there. I couldn't hear any of that. Come back.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, I do want to do a whole story on Milestone, if you're interested in doing that, because I want to do a story on why Milestone was announced by Jim Lee last year at South by Southwest, and it never happened. I'd really like to know why it didn't.
Who's left that could work on that?
Dennis Cowan.
Okay.
Dennis Cowan's still around.
When McDuffie died, right?
McDuffie died, but the guy with BET, who was the money behind Milestone, basically, I can't remember his name, but he wasn't a creator.
Okay.
But the guy that owns the BET network, Black Entertainment. He was the one that was the money behind.
Huh. Now Cowan was incredible. And his
I tell you what, if
reel was amazing.
There is a new Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan are doing a question series right now that is so fucking awesome. It is just,
look into that.
Yeah, it's huh?
Online or
no? It's 2 issues have come out. Oh, Derek Dingle is still around. Yes.
I like Jeffrey. I don't know him, but I like him.
You will love it.
Yeah, Jeffrey works for Steve Jeppy. Yeah. Oh, you're right, Jeffrey. It's Jeff Lemire is writing the new Vic Sage story. Jeff Lemire is another one of my all-time favorite writers right now. Jeff Lemire is totally awesome. Steve, if you haven't read any of the Black Hammer stuff from Dark Horse,
I have.
Jeff Lemire is basically writing a love letter to Golden Age comics.
Oh, nice.
He is just doing such a good story with that. And he's also doing some comics. We're one of the retailers there's a new company out there by Dinesh, who Dinesh is the one that bought Valiant and then got shoved out for whatever reason. But he does a comics company called Bad Idea Comics. And they are only selling direct to stores. They're not going through distribution, and they're picking and choosing which stores they go through. But we're one of the stores that they're going through, and Jeff Lemire and Matt Kent have books coming out from them that are pretty awesome.
Yay.
I hope Tim Dallas is one. Derek Dingle, Mike, Dennis. Bad Idea Comics. This has been exciting for me. May I come back next week and bring you more?
I can. And Jeffrey, so I'll add Jeff to the. You're right, Jeff. Dinesh is an awesome guy. Someone that loves comics enough to buy Valiant as a company and make sure that a Bloodshot movie gets made, and then get pushed out. I don't know why he got pushed out, but
Bloodshot.
I didn't know that Valiant as a company had been bought.
Valiant went out of business.
No, I knew that.
Yeah, and Dinesh is actually the guy that bought Valiant as a company and created Valiant again as a comic company. And he got shoved out, and now he's got Bad Idea Comics.
Marita Beth and I were both very friendly with Steve.
Yeah.
He had published it.
Steve was a dear, dear friend. Big
Yeah, I know.
Steve Mazarski was another one of those that we lost way too soon.
Yeah.
Yes. Was he in the early 50s?
He was super special. Yeah, I think he was 54.
Yeah.
Like 56.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Younger than me.
Was the body?
Which is sad.
Yeah. He was about 10 years older than me. But, yeah. He's been gone a while now, but yeah. The last time
all we can say is you young kids.
I'm going to share this story with you as a player. The last time I saw him, it was September of 2002. And I had been in Maryland doing a Renaissance Festival appearance. And I dropped my trailer with my relatives in Maryland, and I drove to Manhattan to have dinner with Steve. And I'd followed his instructions to this restaurant that we were meeting at, some Japanese sushi place. And I texted him at one point, I'm at the place I should be at to meet you, but I can't find anything because it's like I'm in a war zone. Everything is construction. Everywhere I look, there's freaking construction. What is going on? And he's like, Rita Beth, you're at ground zero.
Why?
Been 1 year. And I was like, oh. Yeah. So I found a place to park and we met for dinner. Yeah. But that was like this crazy, like, I was like, everywhere I look, there's construction. Why is there's construction fences and construction equipment, construction everywhere?
Are you familiar with Just Me or Veronica?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Just Shoot Me or Veronica Mars?
No.
Veronica Mars, I know from a TV series, but that's all.
So, Steve Mazursky reminds me of the father in Veronica Mars.
I'll have to watch that now because I really like Steve.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. Yeah, he was a hoot. He was a no bullshit kind of tell it like it is. Awesome guy. Yeah.
Well, if he was the manager for Aerosmith, he had to be that way.
Exactly. If you don't know about comics, let's talk about music.
Right? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, he was a treasure. And I miss him regularly. His name comes up in this household often.
Yeah.
Look, one more story, and I don't know if I've ever told either of you this. My daughter Jean was maybe 6 or 8 years old, and I was invited up to the Valiant offices, and Jeannie had like 102 fever, so she was home. And being the good father that I am, honey, this is an experience you can't miss. And so I took her to the Valiant offices. And as we're walking up Fifth Avenue towards the Valiant offices, we're at the street corner, and this man is kicking the crap out of a garbage can. And Jeannie says, Daddy, what's happening? And I say, well, honey, he's picked a fight with a garbage can. And then he picks up the garbage can and body slams it. And Jeannie says, well, what do we do now? We keep walking. And we went over to the office to see.
Looking amazingly like a New Yorker.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We keep walking.
Fun stuff. So
look, just keep walking.
Understanding comics to Mouse, to a little bit of Contract with God, and a lot of our life experiences together and individually. I hope that this was fun for whoever stayed with us.
Yep, 8 viewers.
I hope so too.
So
Thank
anyway,
you. Jeff came and went.
Yep. So
all right.
I will add Jeff to our group chat, and we will figure out. But it sounds like I think I like the idea of a God Love Man Kills X-Men story. So.
All right.
Then I laughed also.
4 is a good number. More than 4 is too many. So 4, I'll do.
4
I'll do one more, and then you should go.
You cut out. So anyway, next week you'll be on.
Marita Beth, do it without.
I need to read this book. I'm not an X-Men reader. Not an X-Men reader.
I will bring you the book. I will bring you the book.
Phenomenal. It was one of the first not trade paperbacks, but graphic novels of original artwork for Marvel.
And it's
what it's called? Tell me what it's called.
God
Loves Man Kills. And it's one of the books that I point out every time somebody says SJW on current comics and how the current comics are just social justice warriors. I point out that X-Men was always a parable about,
Absolutely, always.
yes, you know, but there's the whole comics gators people that say that social justice has taken over comics.
Oh, Jesus.
You have never read comics. Then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You
You have no clue.
this is
Claremont. You never read Hulk. You never read Swamp Thing.
And not to move us too far apace, but if you find out you like Brent Anderson, Somerset Holmes is tremendous.
It's a true crime type story. Yeah.
Again, very noir, very emotional in the way it's done.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Awesome. So I'll bring you new books. I'll bring you new books this week. And
Jeff's gone. We lost Jeff.
Yeah.
We did. That's fine.
So
he was lassoed in, so we're glad we got him at all. So that's good.
Marie, Joe Ellen and I had a brief moment with you and Kyle at a Renaissance fair, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago.
Very long time ago.
These last 2 weeks have been so wonderful for me. Thank you. And Ron, I thank you for putting it together for us.
Oh, thank you. I just, comics to me has always been a community, and I love getting the community together. So I think that even, you know, and like I said, we're up to 7 viewers. We're dropping viewers now because I know that we're winding down, but you know, I think that there's a lot of value to this. So I enjoy it.
Sleep for a half hour.
Yeah. So anyway, we will do this again next week. I will do a group chat. I will add Jeff to it, and we will do it again next week.
And I'll promote it to my family and friends, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We have to have an Eisner week.
Yes, we do. After next week, we'll plan an Eisner week. I also have, I've talked to a couple of people like Donnie Cates and Matthew Rosenberg and some other people of the current creators to come on board. And so we're trying to figure out a time for them to come on board too.
Great.
That's awesome.
And I'll mention it again when we have an Eisner week, but one of the great thrills in my life is Rory Root and I sitting with Will and Dennis Kitchen and negotiating that we could use the Eisner spirit as part of our comic relief labels for our price tags. Never happened, but man, was that an honor.
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, one of my favorite things was being able to sponsor the Harvey Awards at
my prized possession.
Yeah, the Dallas Fantasy Fairs, and being able to sit with those people at dinner. So
absolutely.
I know that because it's in my sketchbook and it's nice to me. I know it probably has no value ever in the real world to anybody else, but it is my prized possession.
Yes, it should be.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, good night, folks. Thank you for everybody that stuck around with us, and come join us again next week. We will be doing this all over again, and have a wonderful week and stay safe out there.
I love you.
My daughter, Marita Beth, my granddaughter goes,
oh, that's awesome.
go out to